who buys the grandiloquent poppycock of direct sales as a hopeless dunce. The truth is that this toxically positive rhetoric is fundamentally baked into American society. The cult of multi-level marketing is a direct product of the cult that is Western capitalism itself. In the United States, networking marketing as we know it got its start in the 1930s, post-Great Depression, as a reaction to employment regulations introduced by the New Deal. Although it wasn't until a few years later, after World War II, that the direct sales industry really exploded. That's when it became a women's game. During World War II, women entered the workforce in unprecedented droves while men fought abroad. But after the fighting ended, those women were sent back into the home to care for their children and veteran husbands. In the 1950s, 20 million Americans migrated to suburbia, where there were few job opportunities for women, many of whom missed the excitement, independence, fulfillment, and cash that came with professional life. It was around this time when a businessman named Earl Tupper invented a type of sturdy polyethylene food storage container. He named it Tupperware. The product hadn't exactly been flying off shelves until a single mother from Detroit with a knack for direct sales named Brownie Wise, real name, got a hold of Tupper's wares and decided not only would suburban moms make the perfect consumers for this stuff, they could make a powerful sales force too. Wise and Tupper joined forces, and the at-home Tupperware party was born. Long before the invention of the hashtag, Wise used pseudo-female empowerment verbiage to recruit women into her network of dealers, managers, and distributors. This set the stage for a long future of faux feminist MLM claptrap. "A Tupperware career is so rewarding," reads one vintage ad in cherry red cursive. The illustrated poster depicts a high society woman with corn-colored hair, pearl earrings, and a cashmere sweater. Holding a book, though not reading it, she smiles deliriously while gazing up out of frame at what I can only assume are her dreams. "Earnings begin immediately when you become a Tupperware dealer," cheaps another 40s-era sketch of a different jolly white lady. "You can earn as much as you want. You earn while you learn. You are an independent business owner, your own boss. There is nothing quite like the opportunity you have for earnings as a Tupperware dealer. Now!" Over the following decades, direct sales kingpins followed in Wise's footsteps, angling their products and language toward white stay-at-home moms. They filled women's ears with promises of financial independence, the sort that wouldn't threaten their traditionally feminine, wifely image. To this day, unemployed women, especially those living in blue-collar towns, continue to make up the majority of MLM recruits. Quickly, the direct selling industry figured out how to target other communities locked out of the dignified labor market. Immigrant Spanish speakers, inexperienced college students, and economically marginalized Black folks became additional targets. The industry takes advantage of the trust that already exists within tight-knit groups like churches, military bases, and college campuses. Their ideal recruit is one who is striving for financial stability and has a proven track record of faith and optimism, whether it's hope for a fresh start in a new country, youthful enthusiasm for the future, or belief in a higher power. The typical MLM joinee isn't some greedy jerk looking to get rich quick. They're an everyday person looking to pay their basic bills. A blend of monetary struggle, close community, and idealism is the jackpot for any upline. Christian communities wind up being a hotbed for MLMs, many of which actively identify themselves as faith-based. Mary and Martha, Christian Bling, Unique, 31 Gifts, and Mary Kay are just a few of the many MLMs that lead with an explicitly religious credo. In dozens of American neighborhoods, you'll find salt-of-the-earth people holding the Bible in one hand and pricey lotion samples in the other. It's why the state of Utah is home to more MLM headquarters than anywhere else in the world. Mormons, as direct sales leaders have discovered, are an ideal sales force. Latter-day Saints are born and bred to be missionaries, so preaching the gospel to friends often naturally flows with selling MLM products to their friends, a source told the investigative podcast The Dream. When your uncle comes to you and says, "I have this great life-changing opportunity," sometimes it sounds a lot like a message you would hear at church. Religion has been intertwined with MLMs and with American labor culture in general since before the United States even existed. The marriage of godly blessings and monetary blessings goes back half a millennium to the Protestant Reformation. Sociologists attribute the dawn of modern capitalism to this 16th century movement, which gave birth to so many of our contemporary American workplace values, like the basic idea of a good day's work, keeping your nose to the grindstone, and the good paymaster is lord of another man's purse. The full quote from which this idiom purportedly derives reads, "This text holdeth their noses so hard to the grindstone, that it clean disfigureth their faces," a reference to working hard to avoid punishment. It was written in 1532 by John Frith, a Protestant priest who was burned at the stake a few months later for publicly questioning the English Catholic Church. Isn't blending church and state fun? Protestant reformers, especially French theologian John Calvin, conceived of the idea that God plays a role not just in human beings' spiritual successes and failures, but also in our financial ones. This idea helped create the Protestant ethic, marked by diligent work, individual effort, and accumulation of wealth, which aligned perfectly with Europe's emerging capitalist economy. Soon, everyone began aspiring to the new ideal of a pious, self-reliant entrepreneur. As professional labor became central to Christian life, the ability to call yourself a skilled, hard-working breadwinner indicated that you were a member of God's elect. So, the spirit of capitalism, with all its high highs and low lows, embedded in most Westerners' value systems. So much capitalist vernacular, from the sacred stock market bell to the almighty dollar, continues to have religious overtones, a ghost of the Protestant Reformation. By the 1800s, the Protestant ethic had spread to America, but it had evolved a touch. Now, riches weren't perceived so much as a gift from God, but as a reward for independent achievement and a sign of good character. This revised Protestant ethic stressed ambition, tenacity, and competition, which jibed with the rise of industrial capitalism, defined by mass manufacturing and a clearer division of labor. The 19th century also saw the rise of a philosophical movement called New Thought, which gave us popular self-improvement ideas like the law of attraction. During this time, rags-to-riches stories like Mark Twain's The Prince and the Pauper and Charles Dickens's Great Expectations emerged as bestsellers. The first self-help book, aptly titled Self-Help, was published in 1859 to blockbuster success. It opened with the line, "Heaven helps those who help themselves," and claimed poverty to be a result of personal irresponsibility. This new mind-over-matter attitude that you could control your own destiny, that you could govern everything from your career to your physical health just by believing in yourself, contributed to what we now think of as the American dream. Over the course of the next century, the Protestant ideal changed once more with the rise of big American business. Carnegie Steel, the Rockefellers' Standard Oil, Chicago's Union Stockyards meatpacking district. In the 20th century, independent success and competitiveness were downplayed as it became admirable to get along with your coworkers, hobnob with them, and work your way up the corporate ladder. At this stage, new thought could be found in books and courses on how to become a great company man, how to win friends and influence people, think and grow rich, and the power of positive thinking, were all published between 1935 and 1955. Throughout the mid-20th century, the message that happy thoughts and a healthy ego could make you rich swept America's churches. The Power of Positive Thinking was written by the famous minister Norman Vincent Peale, who ran a conservative Protestant church in New York City called Marble Collegiate. There, Peale preached the prosperity gospel to a congregation of mostly wealthy, influential Manhattanites, including, and especially, a young Donald Trump. By no coincidence, Trump grew up to become a hardcore MLM enthusiast. Known for his inspiring self-help oratory, Peale evangelized sentiments like, "Empty pockets never held anyone back. Only empty heads and empty hearts can do that," and "Believe in yourself. Have faith in your abilities. Without a humble but reasonable confidence in your own powers, you cannot be successful or happy." You can hear Peale's influence in Donald Trump's speeches and social media posts half a century later. Success tip: see yourself as victorious. This will focus you in the right direction. Apply your skills and talent, and be tenacious, Trump tweeted in 2013. Upon launching his presidential campaign in 2016, Trump's rants about self-reliance took a more paranoid turn. Early that year, when asked who he consults on foreign policy, he replied, "I'm speaking with myself, number one, because I have a very good brain and I've said a lot of things. I know what I'm doing. My primary consultant is myself." From this complex history, the MLM, the uncanny love child of Protestantism, capitalism, and corporatization, was conceived. The Protestant ethic remains very much a part of professional culture as a whole in the United States, and we all grow up internalizing its rhetoric. Work hard, play hard. Another day, another dollar. My partner and I have an extensive collection of coffee mugs embellished with little sayings, and the other day I looked up and noticed for the first time that they all just shamelessly evangelize toxic productivity dogma. One mug says, "Sleep is for the weak." Another reads, "A yawn is just a silent scream for coffee." A silent scream? Are we all so conditioned to believe it's romantic to be overworked and exhausted, so terrified of leisure and laziness, that we print cute jokes about it on drinkware? In 21st century America, apparently so. The language of Protestant capitalism is everywhere, all the way down to our coffee mugs, but it plays a starring role in the MLM industry, which at once indulges Americans' most quixotic aspirations and their gravest fears. It's especially pronounced in the way MLMs stress meritocracy, the idea that money and status are individually earned. Meritocracy is founded on the tenet that people can control their lives in big ways, that as long as they really try, they can pull themselves up by their proverbial bootstraps. Americans love the mythology that successful people deserve their success, while struggling people are simply less worthy. MLM recruits, whose success is entirely based on commission from selling and recruiting, relish this notion even more. Per MLM ideology, no win is unearned regardless of what or who is sacrificed to achieve it, and no failure is undeserved either. The majority of direct sales propaganda I've read emphasizes the blood, sweat, tears, heart, and soul necessary to build a sales team, urging sellers to view their efforts as a badge of patriotic honor and to wear it with a smile. Countless MLMs invoke nationalistic slogans to reinforce the idea that enlisting to be a #boss babe means signing up to serve your country. One diet supplement MLM is literally named American Dream Nutrition. Another is called United Sciences of America, Incorporated. Amway, which sells home goods and personal hygiene products like soap and toothpaste, is a portmanteau of American Way. Plenty of modern companies try to sell goods by associating them with larger identity benefits, like by buying this trendy lip gloss, or that beach towel made out of recycled plastic, you will establish yourself as a hip, healthy, sexy, eco-friendly person in general. Sociologists call these organizational ideologies, and they're not necessarily all bad. Most successful brand founders agree that having a cult-like company culture with intense values and rituals is simply necessary to secure repeat customers and loyal employees in today's dubious, transient market. These organizational ideologies should be taken with a grain of salt, of course, since basing one's politics, healthcare decisions, and very identity on what profit-driven brands have to say, even, and especially, ones that self-identify as ethical, sustainable, etc., is risky business. Woke capitalism does not equal social justice, just as hawking diet pills to your Facebook friends does not make you heavenly blessed. By nature, MLMs take their organizational ideologies way further than most other companies, linking themselves not just to everyday earthly benefits, but to the very meaning of life. Direct sales slogans boast spiritually charged promises like, being unique is better than being perfect, and existing and living are not the same thing. Choose one. A Pinterest graphic created by the essential oils MLM doTERRA lists the recipe for a forgiveness blend that will allow consumers to become empathetic, forgiving, freeing, light, loving, tolerant, understanding. Before his death, one of Amway's billionaire co-founders, Jay Van Andel, vowed that involvement with his company gets people into a new life of excitement, promise, profit, and hope. You might think that an industry as unhip and retro-seeming as direct sales might have gone out of style already. It's hard to believe it survived the internet, where so many ex-MLMers put these companies on blast, spilling their stories of psychological abuse and money loss. Search MLM scam on YouTube, and endless pages of videos like, the MLM girl boss narrative is a lie. I filed for bankruptcy after LuLaRoe and now work 2 jobs. And Amway, the final straw. With audio evidence, how I quit my MLM cult. Accumulate millions of views. Anti-MLMers occupy passionate nooks of Instagram and TikTok. In 2020, TikTok banned MLM recruiters from the platform altogether. There is no shortage of incriminating evidence against the #BossBabe industrial complex. And yet, MLM rhetoric is such a successful assault on the human spirit, so consistently compelling and adaptable that these companies only continue to thrive. In the 2010s, as ingredient-conscious millennials began overtaking the consumer market and demand for all-natural, non-toxic personal care products increased, the shrewdest MLM founders accommodated. Direct sales wasn't just for old-school Susie homemakers anymore. It was for the savvy youth. Clean beauty MLMs with chicer, updated packaging pivoted to populating their seller base with micro-influencers, women with small blogs and a few thousand social media followers who could be tempted by an unctuous DM about how their feed is amazing, and would they like to add a second stream of income while becoming part of the clean beauty movement? Pairing deliciously with the glamorous image of a self-employed influencer, this hipper generation of MLMs pitched itself as the perfect side hustle. The nimble direct sales industry always finds a way to reinvent itself. The capitalist cockroach that just won't stop reincarnating. 3. Hey, lady. Just wanted to send a reminder that we're in the business of changing lives here. Yes, we're making money, but it's so much bigger than that. It's a movement. People deserve to be a part of it. They just don't know it yet. So it's up to you to show them the light. You need to be reaching out to everybody. Family, friends, Insta followers, the person behind you in line at Starbucks. Start up a conversation and meet them where they're at. Our products basically sell themselves, so if you're not meeting your goals, you need to work harder and smarter, like the boss babe you are. You have such potential. Don't let me down, but more importantly, don't let yourself down. XOXO. When my middle school friend Becca and I finally got on a call to talk about her MLM experience, it had been a decade since I'd last heard her voice. Becca, now 28, lives in a little white country house in Maryland with her husband, 2 dogs, and 4 cats. She works a 9-to-5 and still plays the same local singing gig she did in high school, Friday nights at Backstage Barbecue Cafe. She goes to AA several times a week and spends most evenings playing with her baby niece. "I know, look what's become of me," she quipped, sporting that old Becca sarcasm and the cozy fronted vowels of our hometown's accent, which I never get to hear anymore. Becca knew from the jump that Optavia, formerly called MetaFast, was a shifty venture. She could hear it. All that marketing mumbo-jumbo, it was so cringe, she affirmed. I guess I could have predicted Becca wouldn't be one of those wide-eyed hopefuls who accidentally find themselves at the bottom of a pyramid scheme. Becca was well aware of Optavia's tricky setup, but she was also confident she could game it by tapping into her massive network of Facebook friends. "I 100% knew it was a cult," she said, "but I was like, whatever, I'll jump on that wagon. Like, let's scam, you know?" Sure. I gulped. Optavia is a weight loss program that delivers pre-packaged meals to consumers' homes, like Nutrisystem or Bistro MD. They definitely try to reel you in by saying all that "be your own boss, work from home" shit. Becca eye-rolled through the phone. Several of Becca's friends were involved with the controversial MLM LuLaRoe, a billion-dollar leggings company that the Washington State Attorney General sued for pyramid scheme activity in 2019. As of the time of this writing, the case is pending trial. Becca saw how wolfishly it consumed their lives, how much money they were hemorrhaging. But when her mother-in-law asked her to do Optavia, whose buy-in fees and quotas were relatively low, it seemed like the right MLM at the right time. About a year prior, Becca's fiancé had been diagnosed with a rare blood cancer before the age of 30. When he finally finished chemo and entered remission, Becca was spent. I had put on a fuck ton of weight because I was taking care of him. I was depressed, recently sober, and I just quit smoking cigs, which will make you fat in and of itself. Her husband's mom was an Optavia seller and had lost a bunch of weight following the program. But because it was so expensive, about $400 a month, Becca never considered doing it herself. Then her mother-in-law floated an idea by her. If Becca signed up to be a coach, posted about her weight loss journey on Facebook a couple of times a week, and got a few other people to sign up, that would pay for her food. "She didn't try any of that boss babe shit on me. She just told me what was up," said Becca. I was like, "Cool, yeah, I can get some other people to sign up, give them the spiel." Becca enrolled as a coach, paid the $100 startup fee, and commenced the diet. "The way it works, you lose weight quick. I lost 50 pounds in 4 months," she confessed. "I mean, the second I stopped eating their food, I looked at a pizza and gained 5 pounds. It's not realistic to keep up with, but you get those before and after pictures, post them with the mumbo-jumbo and the hashtags, and people want to know what you're doing." MLM enrollment strategy requires secrecy up front, so they enforce strict rules about what their coaches, recruits, are allowed to reveal to outsiders. Becca never posted Optavia's name on Facebook because the company explicitly forbids it. Instead, she was provided scripts to post verbatim that made the program sound like this exclusive mystery, all to keep people from searching it and finding what a Scientologist would call black PR. Back in the 70s, the Moonies referred to their guileful recruiting and fundraising tactics with the genteelism heavenly deception. Similarly, MLMers sweet-talk their friends and family into deceiving others along with them. At Mary Kay, a policy euphemistically termed the husband unawareness plan, encourages wives to get involved without their husband's permission, and then teaches them how to keep their costs a secret. One Mary Kay executive senior Cadillac sales director laid out her version of the husband unawareness plan in an instruction manual for her consultants. If you do wish to shop for things today, I want you to know that I accept cash, check, Visa, MasterCard, Discover, American Express. I also do interest-free payment plans and the Husband Unawareness Program, or otherwise known as Very Creative Financing. A little cash, a little on a check, and a little on a card. No one will know the total. Becca was told to withhold all specifics until she got a potential downline on the phone. That's when she'd conduct her health intake, a 20-point survey featuring intimate questions like, if you could not fail, how much weight would you like to lose? When was the last time you were there? What has changed between now and then? Do you remember what that felt like? What would it be like if you were there again? Are there any family members you also want to help? Thank you so much for telling me. I really believe I have something that can help you reach your health goals. I'm so excited to share it with you. These intakes weren't medical examinations conducted by registered dietitians. They were trauma bonding tactics carried out by regular people, like Becca and her mother-in-law. The company knows what it's doing by bestowing recruits with titles like coach, senior coach, presidential director, and global health ambassador. It fills them with a sense of authority. I think a lot of these women convince themselves that they really are a health coach, Becca asserted. They say you are giving people an amazing gift of life. If your coach gives you a shout-out in our secret Facebook group, people are like, incredible job, saving lives. Everyone knows deep down that the difference between a coach and a senior coach has nothing to do with nutrition expertise. It's how many people they were able to add to their downline that month. Yet, when the company is love-bombing you with a fancy title and adulating you as a lifesaver, you become conditioned to interpret it that way, if you want to. Nothing gets Optavia's coaches hyped like its annual leadership retreats and conventions. Recruits save up all year to attend these events, skipping best friends' weddings and grandchildren's births if they must, for the chance to meet Optavia's charismatic leader and co-founder, Dr. Wayne Anderson. They called him Dr. A, and he's like their ruler, Becca winced, referencing the anesthesiologist turned self-described leader of the movement to better health. Dr. A comes out and spits culty inspiration about how we are saving people's lives one person at a time, how we are making America healthy. Of course, they charge a fortune for tickets to see him. All MLMs throw similar Tony Robbins-esque self-help bashes, which cost thousands of dollars to attend. Tupperware hosts an annual jubilee. Mary Kay's career conferences are known for their masterfully orchestrated recognition ceremonies. Recruits don't just go for fun. These conventions are advertised as compulsory if a recruit really wants to succeed. Though, rest assured, the point isn't to provide serviceable selling advice. It's to paint the most extravagantly flattering portrait of the company possible to lure already committed recruits deeper in. The average Amway event reads like a cross between a Christian tent revival, a political rally, a football game, and a supersized family reunion. Some Amway conferences are literally called family reunions. More than any other MLM family, Amway wields unbelievable power, not just over people directly involved with the company, but over the entire American political system. Founded in 1959, Amway operates in 100 countries and rakes in $9 billion a year, thanks to its network of 4 million distributors called International Business Owners, IBOs. Amway is a Christian company whose fundamental message is that Americans have lost touch with the qualities that once made us great: individual freedom to achieve, traditional American family values, and unswerving devotion to God's blessed America. American family values, is a classic piece of loaded language weaponized by the political right to condemn abortion, gay marriage, and feminist politics as inherently anti-American. "I'm going to tell you what's wrong with this country," bellowed Dave Severn, one of the company's unicorn-rare executive diamonds at a 1991 rally. Amway's top titles are all named after precious gems and other treasures: ruby, pearl, emerald, diamond, double diamond, triple diamond, crown, crown ambassador. "They have allowed everything we stand for to simply go down the tubes by hiring unchristian people to try and run a Christian-based society. The Amway business is built on God's laws." Amway's two deeply conservative founders were Jay Van Andel and Rich DeVos, who died in 2004 and 2018, respectively. That second name should sound familiar. The DeVosses are a Michigan-based family of politically influential billionaires. Rich was the father-in-law of Donald Trump's Secretary of Education, Betsy. With a personal net worth of over $5 billion, Rich DeVos served as the finance chair of the Republican National Committee, was BFFs with Gerald Ford, secured special Amway tax breaks for hundreds of millions of dollars, and funneled prodigious sums into Republican presidential candidates' coffers. Amway funded the campaigns of Ronald Reagan, both George Bushes, and naturally, the most direct sales-friendly president of all time, Donald Trump. Throughout the 2010s, Trump made a killing from his endorsements of several MLMs. These included a vitamin company and a seminar company, both of which paid him 7 figures for permission to use his likeness as a mascot and to rebrand as the Trump Network and Trump Institute. In 2019, a federal judge ruled that Trump and his 3 children could be sued for fraud in connection with these organizations. To return DeVos's favors, these presidents all publicly lauded Amway and the Direct Selling Association in general as a commendable, profoundly patriotic enterprise. Even Democrats have accepted DeVos money in exchange for public praise. Bill Clinton took home $700,000 in 2013 after speaking at an Amway conference in Osaka, Japan. Rich DeVos's 17th century interpretation of prosperity theology suggests that if you are not rich, then God does not love you. As he declared, "The free enterprise system is a gift of God to us, and we should understand it, embrace it, and believe in it." According to DeVos, if you feel as though you've been shut out of the system your whole life, then you'd be an imbecile not to give up on bureaucracy and turn to an MLM. This is the rhetoric that permeates Amway's legendary rallies, where the run of show might go something like this. Delivered with the anthemic cadence of a Pentecostal preacher, an MC kicks off with some anecdote about 1 or 2 of Amway's most successful IBOs. Then they introduce the featured speaker. Soundtracked by the Rocky theme song, the orator emerges while attendees go berserk. The speaker, typically a white male, gem-level IBO pocketing tens of thousands of dollars for the appearance, narrates his emotional success story while clicking through a PowerPoint of the homes, yachts, cars, and vacations he's acquired thanks to Amway. Shouts of, "Ain't it great?" and "I believe," echo throughout the venue. Diamonds and pearls call out, "How sweet it is!" An award presentation follows, and in closing, the audience joins in a tearful performance of "God Bless America." At the end, uplines look their downlines in the eye and literally say, "I love you." It doesn't take a sociologist to see how deceptive it is to drop the love bomb on one's business subordinates, especially knowing they will never make a dime from the relationship, much less buy a yacht. Most recruits don't even want a yacht. They'd have no use for a yacht. Again, the reason they struck up with the company in the first place and then attended this overblown conference was because they're a stay-at-home mom or an immigrant attempting to build a decent life. Say you're an MLMer who's been in business for a while, even attended a conference or two, and have finally started feeling like you want to get out. Mention these inklings to anyone inside, and you can expect your upline to spam your inbox with messages guilt-tripping and gaslighting you into staying. Becca was fortunate that her mother-in-law was a fairly chill upline, so when she decided to quit while she was ahead, a year into Optavia, she only had a handful of calls to ignore. But for other MLMers, the exit cost feels enormous. While there probably won't be Scientology-esque threats of alien body snatching, you very well might experience agonizing guilt and anxiety that you're giving up on your dreams and losing a surrogate family. One former Amway IBO lamented how terrible it felt to have people who once told her they loved her suddenly ghost her with no remorse. Right at the beginning, you're confronted with love and attention by Amwayians. You get the impression that people are really interested in you as a person. That's simply not true. It is only a means to bind you to the group. 4. Hey babe, I saw your message in the group Facebook chat. I know you're thinking about leaving. You're feeling frustrated and uninspired. I get it. Believe me. But the most successful people in this business are the ones who push through. Think of this as a test. Will you prove yourself to be a total boss babe and turn things around, or will you give up? Think of how much time and work you've already put in. Do you really want to throw it all away? Think of all the money you'll make if you keep going a couple months more. Think of those medical bills. Think of your kids. Don't be selfish. Be strong. You know we're all family here, so please, help me help you. Let's hop on a call to talk this through before you do something you'll regret, okay? XOXO. There's another portion of the answer to what makes MLM language sound scammy and cringe to some people, but inviting and believable to others. Whether we associate statements like, "Do you want to swim in cash?" and "You could be a millionaire within a year," with fraud, has to do not with the words themselves, which, all on their own and without any context, do sound enticing. Instead, it has to do with the different ways humans have evolved to process information. It has to do with the social science of gullibility. According to Nobel Prize-winning psychologist Daniel Kahneman, gullibility exists because of two opposing data processing systems that have developed in humans' brains: System 1 and System 2 thinking. System 1 thinking is quick, intuitive, and automatic. When someone tells us something, this system relies on personal experience and anecdotal knowledge to make a snap judgment. Among ancient humans who lived in small groups, where trust was built on lifelong face-to-face relationships, this method was pretty much all you needed. Back then, you didn't have to be too skeptical when someone told you something, because that someone was probably your mom or cousin or another person you'd known forever. Nowadays, whenever we have a heuristic response to some piece of news, causing us to make an instant decision about it, that's System 1 thinking. Then we have System 2, which involves slower, more deliberative, rational judgment. This is a much newer development. In the information age, where billions of people interact with each other anonymously online, spreading questionable claims and deleterious conspiracy theories, System 2 thinking becomes useful. Because when something sounds fishy, we don't have to lean on instinct to make decisions about it. We can take our time, ask questions, thoroughly investigate, and then decide how we want to react. Unfortunately, because this process is so much newer than System 1, it doesn't always work. In part, we have those deeply embedded human reasoning flaws, like confirmation bias and hazy cognitive labor divisions, to thank for our System 2 dysfunction. Long story short, human beings are evolving to be able to handle lots of information about lots of different things. But we're not AI robots, and we're not doing it perfectly. In contemporary life, when an MLM is pitched with all the bombastic fixings, many people have a gut reaction. They don't need to write out a pros and cons list or think about it critically. After all, the pitch likely came from someone they know well and can judge easily. They're able to tell right away that either A, this indeed sounds like a great opportunity, or B, this thing is trash and not for them. That's System 1 at work. But other people find themselves needing more time and careful thought. Luckily, we have System 2. The economist Stacey Bosley once did an experiment to demonstrate how Systems 1 and 2 pan out in pyramid scheme recruitment. She set up shop at a state fair and handed willing passers-by $5 in cash, telling them they could either keep the money or try her airplane game, which is like a condensed version of a pyramid scheme. Some people took one look at the offer and said, "No way, lady, I'm keeping my $5. That's a scam." Other people took time to process it, looked at all the rules, assessed, and finally told her, "No, this is a bad deal." They came to the same conclusion, but via System 2 instead of System 1. Then there were people who deliberated carefully but lacked the tools to do that well, the cognition, the literacy, so they decided to play the airplane game after all. And then there were those who just impulsively played the game and got screwed that way. Impulsivity, says Bosley, is a common diagnostic indicator of people's vulnerability to fraud. It's not totally clear why some people have a System 1 spidey sense for pyramid schemes, quack health cures, and other too-good-to-be-true messaging, while others don't. Some researchers say it might be related to differences in trust that stem from early childhood. The theory being that when you develop trust as a little kid, it sets a lifelong expectation that the world will be honest and nice to you. All sorts of childhood exposures could cause a person to become more or less trusting. Some people, like my dad, might have had their trust damaged by an absent parent or another kind of trauma. Certainly, when you add factors like stress and financial hardship, some people choose to ignore their skeptical instincts and find themselves neck-deep in a shakedown anyway. As much as I'd like to take full intellectual credit for my exquisitely sensitive scam nose, I know that my disdain for pyramid schemes likely correlates to the fact that I am privileged enough to have no urgent need for their promises. Sociologists also say that higher education and training in the scientific method generally make people less gullible. And for better or for worse, so does being in a bad mood. In several experiments, researchers found that when someone is in a good mood, they become more innocent and unsuspecting, while feeling grumpy makes one better at sensing deception, which has to be the most curmudgeonly superpower I've ever heard. 5. My favorite line I've heard MLMers use to defend their business is, "This isn't a pyramid scheme. Corporate jobs are the real pyramid scheme." It's both a nonsense, thought-terminating cliché and a flashing neon sign of us versus them conditioning. But while MLMs talk a lot of smack about corporate America, and corporate America thinks of MLMs as a scammy joke, they are ultimately both derived from the same Protestant capitalist history. And the toxically positive fable that our society is a true meritocracy, that you can climb the ladder from the bottom to the top if you just work hard and have faith, imbues the rhetoric of our normal workforce too. Many modern companies actively aim to gain a cult following in the image of companies like Trader Joe's, Starbucks, and IKEA. Brands that succeeded in cultivating extreme solidarity and loyalty among both employees and patrons. To learn more about the language of cult-like corporations, I hit up a Dutch business scholar and management consultant named Manfred F.R. Ketz de Vries. Having studied workplace leadership styles since the 1970s, Ketz de Vries confirmed that language is a critical clue when determining if a company has become too cultish for comfort. Red flags should rise when there are too many pep talks, slogans, sing-songs, code words, and too much meaningless corporate jargon, he said. Most of us have encountered some dialect of hollow workplace gibberish. Corporate BS generators are easy to find on the web, and fun to play with, churning out phrases like rapidiously orchestrating market-driven deliverables and progressively cloudifying world-class human capital. At my old fashion magazine job, employees were always throwing around woo-woo metaphors like synergy, the state of being on the same page, move the needle, make noticeable progress, and mind share. Something having to do with the brand's popularity? I'm still not sure. My old boss especially loved when everyone needlessly transformed nouns into transitive verbs and vice versa. Whiteboard to whiteboarding. Sunset to sunsetting. The verb ask to the noun ask. People did it even when it was obvious they didn't know quite what they were saying or why. Naturally, I was always creeped out by this conformism and enjoyed parodying it in my free time. In her memoir, Uncanny Valley, tech reporter Anna Wiener christened all forms of corporate vernacular garbage language. Garbage language has been around since long before Silicon Valley, though its themes have changed with the times. In the 1980s, it reeked of the stock exchange, buy-in, leverage, volatility. The 90s brought computer imagery, bandwidth, ping me, let's take this offline. In the 21st century, with startup culture and the dissolution of work-life separation, the Google ball pits and in-office massage therapists, in combination with movements toward transparency and inclusion, we got mystical, politically correct, self-empowerment language. Holistic, actualize, alignment. This jargon isn't damaging in and of itself. As always, words need context, and when used in competitive startup environments, those in power can easily take advantage of staffers' eagerness to achieve and basic need for employment. Excessive garbage language may signal that upper management is suppressing individuality, putting employees in a headspace where their entire reality is governed by the company's rules, which likely weren't created with much compassion or fairness in mind. Research consistently shows that something like 1 in 5 CEOs has psychopathic tendencies. All companies have special terms, and sometimes they make sense, but sometimes they're nonsense, said Ketz DeVries. As a consultant, sometimes I enter an organization where people use code names and acronyms, but they don't actually know what they're talking about. They're just imitating what top management says. At Amazon, for instance, Jeff Bezos's ideals are strikingly similar to those of MLM leaders. Disdain for bureaucracy, fixation on hierarchies, incentives to rise to the top no matter who gets thrown under the bus, and a juxtaposition of lofty motivational speak with metaphors of defeat. Bezos created his own version of the 10 Commandments called the Leadership Principles. It's a code for how Amazonians should think, behave, and speak. There are 14 of these principles, all vague platitudes like think big, dive deep, have backbone, and deliver results. Employees recite them like mantras. According to an explosive 2015 New York Times Amazon expose, these rules are part of the company's daily language, used in hiring, cited at meetings, and quoted in food truck lines at lunchtime. Some Amazonians say they teach them to their children. After an Amazon employee is hired, they are assigned to commit all 511 words of the leadership principles to memory. They are quizzed a few days later, and those who recite the principles perfectly receive a symbolic award: permission to proclaim, "I'm peculiar," Amazon's catchphrase for those who admirably push workplace boundaries. From then on, employees are expected to tear each other's ideas apart in meetings, similar to the vicious confrontations of the Synanon game, even when doing so is uncomfortable or exhausting. That's according to leadership principle number 13. If an underling gives an opinion or responds to a question in a way their manager doesn't like, they can expect to be called stupid or interrupted mid-sentence and told to stop speaking. According to ex-Amazonians, maxims often repeated around the office include, "When you hit the wall, climb the wall," and "Work comes first, life comes second, and trying to find the balance comes last." As Bezos himself wrote in a 1999 shareholder letter, "I constantly remind our employees to be afraid, to wake up every morning terrified." Though petrifying your staff into obedience might help a company meet its goals faster in the short term, Ketz DeVries says that rigidity stifles innovation, which in the long term is bad for both the business and its employees. And that's to say nothing of ethics or empathy. During his management consultations, Ketz DeVries advises senior execs to ask themselves, does the company foster individuality and nonconformism to drive breakthroughs? Does it encourage employees to have a life and language of their own? Or does everyone speak in the exact same tone, using the exact same verbiage, which sounds suspiciously like that of the person in charge? Being in a top management position, if you're not careful, you go into an echo chamber, Ketz DeVries explained. People are going to tell you what you want to hear, so you start to get away with your madness, and that madness becomes institutionalized very quickly. I interviewed a former employee of a sustainable fashion startup, initially about her involvement with The Class by Taryn Toomey, a cult fitness studio we'll discuss a bit in Part 5. And she told me the only reason she got involved with the workout cult in the first place was in response to finally quitting her hellish job. For the 3 years she worked at the fashion company, its physically stunning, psychologically sadistic leader prevented her from sleeping, earning a living wage, or maintaining outside relationships. Eventually, the role sent her into a self-described nervous breakdown, and she left to do some soul-searching. That's when she found The Class, which wound up being a wholly positive experience for her. The workout group is nothing like my old job, which took over my entire existence, she told me. My boss expected us to treat her company as our religion. It actually kind of ruined my life for a while. Millions of Americans have worked for a cult-like company at some point, and some of us have even suffered through an atmosphere as tyrannous as Amazon's. On the elusive ladder of American capitalism, it's just a few rungs up from a corporation that pays you not in money, but in lies. The Star-Spangled MLM. 6. I said before that an MLM is just a pyramid scheme that hasn't gotten caught. So how do you catch one? To find the answer, let's look back at the story of how the Federal Trade Commission, FTC, shut down its very first MLM. In the early 1970s, a shoddy cosmetics company perplexingly named Holiday Magic, it had nothing to do with annual festivities, began fielding a stampede of lawsuits. The business had been founded about a decade earlier by William Penn Patrick, the single most snake-oily gas bag of all the direct sales guys I've come across. Based in Northern California, this dude was a tight-ass wannabe Republican senator in his 30s whom the Los Angeles Times once called the state's strangest politician. Like most other MLM founders, Patrick was big on prosperity theology and New Thought, and he was famous for turning inspirational mottos mendacious. Tell recruits they're going to be happier, healthier, wealthier, and receive what they want out of life with the Holiday Magic program, he wrote, adding in the same pen stroke, any person who fails in the Holiday Magic program must fall into one of the following categories: lazy, stupid, greedy, or dead. Patrick was also known for throwing the uttermost bizarre MLM conference in history. Called Leadership Dynamics, it took place in a crappy Bay Area motel and cost $1,000 to attend. For 2 days straight, Patrick had recruits engage in a series of freaky power games. He made them climb inside coffins and strung them up on gigantic wooden crosses, where they dangle all afternoon. Like Jim Jones, Chuck Dietrich, and, to a lesser degree, Jeff Bezos, he also forced them into group therapy sessions where they verbally tormented each other for hours on end. Patrick's behavior was unhinged from all angles, but when the FTC brought him to court, their most compelling argument against him, and what eventually allowed them to shut down Holiday Magic, was their points about his speech. Ultimately, the court ruled that Patrick's deceptive hyperbole, loaded buzzwords, and gaslighting disguised as inspiration were what defined him as a pyramid schemer. This makes sense because in every corner of life, business and otherwise, when you can tell deep down that something is ethically wrong but are having trouble pinpointing why, language is a good place to look for evidence. This is where the FTC turned to squash Holiday Magic, and over the next few years, its attorneys cited the same type of outlandish, fraudulent messaging as they prosecuted a litany of MLMs, including the biggest one they ever went after, Amway. In 1979, the FTC finally accused Jay Van Andel and Rich DeVos of pyramid scheme activity, which led to a massive drawn-out case. But as we know, Amway never closed up shop. Again, this was a company whose founders golfed with heads of state. There was no chance the government was going to take them down. The judge fined the company $100,000, chump change for the corporate heavyweight, and sent them on their merry way. Ultimately, the FTC, losing its case against Amway, offered the whole direct sales industry a measure of protection from there on out. Since 1979, the FTC has only canned a handful of MLMs, and never any of the giants. Now, every time an MLM comes under fire, they can say, No, you have us all wrong. We're not a pyramid scheme. We're not a cult. We're just like Amway. We're a meritocracy. We're the chance to be an entrepreneur, a business owner, a #boss babe. We're not a scam. We're the American dream. And as far as the courts are concerned, these sentiments are just true enough to believe there's nothing cultish about them at all. Hey girl, I hate that I have to do this, but I just got word from the top, and unfortunately, we're going to have to let you go. When you first joined my team, I was so excited about your potential. But despite all the time and effort we put into growing you, it doesn't seem like you really wanted it. Some people aren't the right fit for this opportunity, and trust me, as your upline, that's harder for me than it is for you. I'm going to have to remove you from the Facebook group and deactivate your account. I guess you weren't a boss babe after all. X. Part 5. This hour is going to change your life and make you look awesome. 1. I'm vigorously power marching in place, like a toy soldier. It feels dopey, and I want to half-ass it, but I told myself I'd either do this with everything I've got or not at all. Rolling my forearms and fists in front of me with as much gusto as my muscles will allow, I'm squeezing my eyes shut while repeating the phrase, I am powerful beyond measure. My parents are on either side of me, staggered slightly so there's enough room, performing the same move and joining me in the affirmation. I am powerful beyond measure. Embody it! Awaken it! Cries our glowing leader, Patricia Moreno, projecting equal parts tenderness and ferocity. She calls this move willpower. A few 8 counts later, we are punching the air in front of us, twisting our torsos with each hook. This move is called strong. It's the reminder to stop talking about what you can't do and call up your strength, Moreno narrates. You decide that today you are strong enough to make any change you want to make. Say, I am stronger than I seem. Still punching and twisting, we repeat, I am stronger than I seem. Beautiful! Feel like a warrior, croons Moreno. 2 more movements complete our 4-step routine. The next one is called brave. Jumping up on one foot, kicking the opposite leg back behind us, We curl our hands into clenched spheres and rocket launch them into the sky, one at a time. Whenever you're stressed, just do that move, and it'll help interrupt worries and doubts and fears, impels Moreno. And then you change your language and you say, I am braver than I think. My parents and I echo the line, exploding our bodies into the air. I am braver than I think. Last move, abundance. We touch our palms to our hearts, zestfully shoot them open in a wide V above our heads, touch our hearts again, then extend our arms down by our hips to mirror the previous posture. Meanwhile, we repeat, I am blessed with all I need. Gratitude is the attitude that will change your life, roars Moreno. You have to think about, talk about, focus on the blessings you already have. Now we're breaking into a jumping jack, arms wide at the top and a deep toe touch at the bottom, shouting, I am blessed with all I need. Let's do them all, invites Moreno, and we repeat the 4 movements in a row. Willpower, strong, brave, abundance. And then, out of nowhere, tears. I'm no more than 5 minutes into Moreno's movement affirmations when my voice breaks into a warble. My mom turns and smiles uncomfortably. Amanda, are you crying? I hear her attempt not to sound judgmental. My parents haven't seen me cry in 2 years. Everyone said this would happen, I shriek in self-defense, at once laughing and blubbering, betrayed by this liquidy reflex. With that, the spell is broken. All right, that's enough, my dad grumbles, shaking off the routine like a costume he just noticed was ridiculous. I'm going to the garage to get on the life cycle. I exercise by myself. We know, Craig. Take the recycling with you, my mother retorts, still marching in place, rolling her hands. It's hijinks here at the Montell household. My science professor parents and I, the most cynical trio ever to shout the phrase, I'm blessed with all I need, mid-jumping jack, are taking a free online intensati class. This media-proclaimed cult favorite workout was created in the early 2000s by former aerobics champion and today's virtual instructor, 55-year-old Patricia Moreno, whose shiny black ponytail and radiant grin are broadcasting from an iPad in my parents' sunroom. Baptized by Cosmopolitan.com as a super fit Mexican Oprah meets a jock version of J-Lo, Moreno makes athletics and enlightenment seem like an effortless combo. Her high-energy technique pairs elements of dance, kickboxing, and yoga with spoken affirmations, so each move has a mantra that goes with it. In the lingo of intensati, these move affirmation pairings are called incantations, a concept Moreno learned at a Tony Robbins conference at the turn of the millennium. Intensati, a play on intensity, is a portmanteau of intention and sati, the Pali word for mindfulness. It could definitely be classified as woo-woo. At 58 and 64, my mom and dad are in fantastic shape, way better than I am, thanks to all the biking and swimming they do in Santa Barbara, where they moved from Baltimore 7 years ago. They're not group workout people. They love to remind me, but while I'm visiting for the weekend, I've convinced them to try out one of the cult fitness classes I've been researching for this book. I know all about at-home workouts. My mother beams, gathering her hair into a neat bun. I signed up for Peloton, you know. Intensati was recommended to me by Natalia Petrozella, a student-turned-instructor who started following Moreno, both physically and ideologically, in 2005. I was inclined to listen to Natalia, who seemed more down-to-earth than the cult workout stereotype I'm used to seeing in Los Angeles. The Equinox-subscribed wellness crusader who goes to SoulCycle 3 times a week and core power yoga the other 4 days, lives in Lululemon leggings, and hasn't ingested a simple carbohydrate since season 12 of The Bachelor. Natalia is a fitness historian at the New School in New York City with a PhD from Stanford, who relatably identifies as not athletic and alienated by sports. She promised that if I, a feminist killjoy who's intimidated by exercise, were going to fall in love with any cult workout, she's pretty sure Intensati would be the one. I was just as skeptical of this culty workout stuff as you, Natalia swears. I remember Intensati was first described to me as using voices and visualizations to transform your body and your outlook. And I was like, hell no, this is so woo-woo. All right, I respond. I'll give it a whirl. The marriage of mystical self-help messaging with a hardcore exercise class might not seem remarkable now, but when Natalia found Intensati in the mid-aughts, the two concepts had only just become acquainted. Moreno didn't know it when she created the workout in 2002, but its launch was perfectly timed. At the turn of the 21st century, boutique fitness was just beginning to erupt as a major industry. In the 1980s and 90s, most Americans got their exercise in big box gyms or community centers like the YMCA. Small, pricier workout classes with charismatic instructors, strong branding, and transcendent benefits were not yet the norm. As recently as the 1950s, the medical community didn't even universally recommend exercise for women, much less that they sweat their asses off while shouting empowering things about themselves in public multiple times a week. In the 1920s and 30s, one of the only successful American fitness salons was a chain called Slenderella, whose philosophy was entirely built on slimming women's bodies daintily, without sweat, and purely for cosmetic purposes. Classes offered rhythmics, light stretching, and dance, promising to trim female clients in all the right places, minus the toil and suffering of real exertion, which was ruled to be contemptuously unfeminine, leading to big, manly muscles and reproductive risks. American women instead developed a fixation with reducing, and ever since, weight loss has remained a dismal cult of its own. It wasn't until the late 1960s when everyday Americans fully came around to the idea that working out to the point of perspiration was good for everyone. In 1968, the blockbuster fitness book, Aerobics, helped convince the public that exercise was indeed beneficial for both men and women. Over the following decade or two, women embraced exercise with gusto and soon figured out what cognitive anthropology studies would later reveal, that it was more fun to do it in groups. Endorphins surge even more powerfully when we exercise together. In the 1970s and 80s, with the women's liberation movement well underway, the passage of Title IX, and the invention of the sports bra, women were poised to gather together and get fit. This is right around when jazzercise took off, and by 1984, it would become one of the country's fastest-growing franchises, second only to Domino's Pizza. Invented by professional dancer Judy Shepard-Missett, jazzercise turned millions of women onto the concept of community fitness. Celebrity instructors like Jane Fonda and Raquel Welch, with their signature bright spandex and sprightly delivery, became some of the first fitness influencers. Big box gyms and health clubs like 24-Hour Fitness and Crunch took over the workout market for a while throughout the late 80s and 90s, around the same time yoga found its way to everyday Americans. Of course, yoga had already existed for millennia. References to the practice can be found in Indian texts dating back 2,500 years. But for much of yoga's history, its only practitioners were religious ascetics. For these Eastern yogis, there were no acrobatic sun salutations or cranked thermostats. Yoga was more like meditation, and it was entirely centered on stillness. To this day, some monks in India continue to perform feats of marathon motionlessness, posed without a twitch for days on end. Almost all of the West's popular assumptions about yoga theory come from after the 1800s. That's when developments in photography allowed pictures of yoga poses to make their way overseas. Europeans were transfixed by these images and merged the Indian postures with their existing notions of bodybuilding and gymnastics. Yoga historians say much of what modern Americans recognize as yoga today is partly a result of this mashup. Toward the end of the 20th century, yoga planted the seed that fitness studios could be more than just places to change your body. They could also be intimate temples of emotional well-being, even spiritual enlightenment. But the rituals needed to create that sense of mysticism, rituals like affirmations, mantras, and chanting, whose roots are in religion, weren't yet overlapping with intense exercise. The idea to mix the physical and the metaphysical was still about as far from people's minds as crossing a donut with a croissant. Which is to say, it was coming, and it was going to be huge. But the recipe hadn't come together quite yet. But then, the 21st century happened. Not long after the stroke of midnight on Y2K, every piece of American fitness history seemed to fuse and detonate, kicking off the cult fitness industry as we know it. In 2000, we got the bar method, the studio that catalyzed America's fixation with the ballet-inspired fitness craze. The same year we got CrossFit, which catered to a very different demographic than bar, but whose boxes had an equally boutique-y anti-gym vibe. At its peak in early 2020, CrossFit flaunted over 10,000 boxes, generating $4 billion annually. That was before many locations disaffiliated with the brand name due to Greg Glassman outing himself as a shameless racist. More on that in a bit. With 2001 came Pure Barre, which scaled to over 500 North American studios. The following year brought Core Power Yoga, which grew into 200-plus locations. SoulCycle, with its nightclub-esque lighting, loud music, and zippy instructors, arrived in 2006, just a few months before LA fitness instructor Tracy Anderson helped Gwyneth Paltrow lose her baby weight, boosting Hollywood personal trainers to a celebrity station of their own. Over the following 15 years or so, boutique fitness studios multiplied and spun off of each other, making them a fixture in American society. According to the International Health, Racquet, and Sports Club Association, the U.S. health and fitness industry was worth over $32 billion in 2018. Soon, there was a workout class for any interest. Whether you were into cycling, circuit training, running, yoga, dancing, pole dancing, boxing, jiu-jitsu, Pilates on a land-bound mechanical surfboard. This is a real workout that exists in LA at a studio called Sandbox Fitness. In a room covered in actual sand, clients mount stationary surfboards and perform a variety of nearly impossible strength exercises aided by resistance bands dangling from the ceiling. I learned of this unusual torture from a model-esque action film star whom I interviewed for a magazine article in 2017. "You get so ripped," she gushed, her pupils dilating. "I do it every morning. You have to try it." Or literally anything else, you could find a devoted fitness community. In addition to SoulCycle, CrossFit, and countless bar, Pilates, and yoga shops, we got Barry's Boot Camp, high-intensity interval training, aka HIIT, with a sassy twist. Orange Theory, like Barry's but more competitive. November Project, free outdoor boot camps held at 6 a.m. The Class by Taryn Toomey, like boot camp meets yoga, with screaming. Model Fit, what all the models do. Plate Fit, like Model Fit but on a giant vibrating apparatus. Intensati, you're familiar? Rise Nation, the soul cycle of stair climbing. Lit Method, the soul cycle of rowing. Lek Fit, the soul cycle of trampolining. Peloton, like SoulCycle via Zoom, and dozens upon dozens more. Unlike the YMCAs and jazzercise classes of the past, these intimate studios positioned themselves as sacred spaces, as movements, offering a potent ideological, deeply personal experience. Within these hallowed, inspirational, quote-bedecked halls, you'll not only perfect your squat and decrease your resting heart rate, you'll also find a personal mentor, meet your best friends, get over your ex, summon the confidence to ask for a raise, manifest your soulmate, get sober, get through chemo, and prove to yourself once and for all that you're powerful beyond measure and blessed with all you need. SoulCycle talks about how people come for the body but stay for the breakthrough, said Casper ter Kuile, a researcher at Harvard Divinity School and author of The Power of Ritual. It's a good workout, but that's only the beginning. In these classes, fitness devotees find a sense of release, insight on what's important to them, and a sanctuary away from the pressures of their everyday existence. It is more safe and more powerful than even church, a deep-dyed soul cycler who rides in San Francisco's Castro neighborhood told Harvard Divinity School. At SoulCycle, he said, "I feel like I'm at home." It is no accident that the studio fitness industry blew up so suddenly and powerfully in the early 2010s, a time when adults' trust in both traditional religion and the medical establishment took a sharp decline. An unshocking 2018 poll by the Multiple Chronic Conditions Resource Center found that 81% of American millennials are unsatisfied with their healthcare experience due to everything from high insurance costs to institutional race and gender bias. Not to mention the U.S.'s lack of public fitness programs, like, say, Japan's radio calisthenics broadcasts, which folks are free to follow at home or together in community parks each morning at no cost. Younger Americans feel like they have no choice but to take their health into their own hands. Combine this withdrawal from mainstream medicine with young people's disillusionment with traditional faith, and cult fitness exploded to fill these corporeal and spiritual voids. In a 2015 study called How We Gather, ter Kuile explored the ways millennials find community and transcendence beyond conventional religious communities, and found that studio workout classes were among the 10 most profound and formative spaces, at least for a certain demographic, because as soon as people began coveting fitness so intensely, they started to crave more exclusivity too. In high school, I paid $99 a year for my Planet Fitness membership, which, granted, I almost never used. But 10 years later, exercising might cost up to half that much just for one class. And that doesn't count the designer uniform implicitly required, the $100 Lulus, the $80 rose quartz infused glass water bottle, which is a real product I found on Net-a-Porter. A home Peloton bike costs $2,000 and the app an additional monthly fee. Certainly, there are less overtly elitist fitness movements happening all over the U.S., some right up the street from the goop-obsessed Malibu stereotype. A 2014 ethnography of LA's El Monte Zumba ladies documents a tight-knit community of Latina women of all ages and shapes whose $4 banda meets flash dance-style exercise classes, complete with kitschy neon spandex, are nothing short of divinely feminine sanctuaries. But those aren't the trendy workout spaces that make cosmopolitan headlines. The audience to which cult fitness primarily caters, urban-dwelling millennials with income to spare, overlaps quite precisely with the contingency that has renounced traditional religion. For this population, wellness startups and influencers started doing the work of spiritual and community leaders. It's always chancy to put such trust in the hands of someone whose bottom line is their own brand. But for consumers who felt like they had nowhere else to turn, the risk seemed worth it. Starting in the 2010s, America's fastest-growing companies in general became the ones that offered not only desirable products and services, but also personal transformation, belonging, and answers to big life questions like, who am I in this increasingly isolated world? How do I connect with people around me? How do I find my most authentic self and take the steps to become that person? In so many pockets of American culture, folks turn to workout studios for these answers. Meaning-making is a growth industry, said Turkile. Like church, fitness brands became both a social identity and a code by which to lead your life. The fitness movement encompasses customs and rituals, social expectations, and consequences for failing to show up. People meet their closest friends and spouses in the studio. True diehards quit their jobs to become instructors themselves. I don't want to ride. I don't ever want to ride. A good hair day is a good enough excuse for me not to ride. Now I'm riding 5 or 6 times a week because we have built such a supportive community, effused one devout Peloton user in a 2019 New York Magazine interview. It goes so beyond the bike. Workout studios wound up feeling, to some degree, holy. After all, they became some of the only physical spaces where the young and religiously ambivalent could put down their devices and find in-the-flesh community and connection. We're living in dark times, remarked Sam Rapinski, owner of a radically inclusive Los Angeles gym called Everybody. We're very segregated and separated. We're cut off by technology. We don't connect with our bodies, or each other. So if there's a space that encourages that on any level, people are so happy to be there. On top of cerebral notions of meaning-making and existential loneliness, add the rise of social media fitness influencers and the so-called aspirational body standards they promote, plus innovations in workout technology, high-performance athletic wear, fitness trackers, streaming classes, and it's no wonder the business of exercise boomed in a godlike way. At some point during the mid-2010s, the phrase cult workout entered our vocabularies, a succinct label to describe the fitness industry's intensified societal role. Participants in Casper ter Kuile's Harvard Divinity School study sincerely told him things like, "SoulCycle is like my cult," and they meant it in a good way. The cult comparisons were something brands didn't know how to handle at first. In 2015, I interviewed SoulCycle's senior vice president of brand strategy and PR about the company's status as a cult workout. Cautiously, she told me, "We don't use that word. We say community." It was very clear that she didn't want to leave people any room to conflate her employer with the likes of Scientology. But over the years, fitness studios have really leaned into the churchly role they play in members' lives. SoulCycle's website explicitly reads, "SoulCycle is more than just a workout, it's a sanctuary." Publicly crying, eulogizing lost loved ones, confessing wrongdoings, and testifying to how the group changed one's life are customs regularly found and embraced within studio walls. "I want the next breath to be an exorcism," is among the supernatural catchphrases SoulCycle instructors preach in class. A few years ago, I spoke with Taylor and Justin Norris, the founders of Lit Method, an up-and-coming indoor rowing brand. The peppy husband and wife duo cut the ribbon on their West Hollywood studio in 2014, aiming to replicate SoulCycle's success. They're still working on it. When I asked how they felt about the association between their business and the word cult, they said in unison, "We love it." They call us the Bolt Cult on Instagram because our logo is a lightning bolt. Taylor beamed, flashing a telegenic grin. I know there's a negative connotation to cult, but we see it in a very positive way. 2. When I first began investigating workout cults, it was their aggressively worshipful language, the chanting and screaming, the woo-woo jargon and pump-up monologues that triggered my System 1 impulses. A cult is like porn. You know it when you hear it. SoulCycle's theatrically uplifting maxims, "You can climb this mountain, you're a boss, change your body, change your mind, change your life," seemed like the bogus waffling of a self-help blowhard. Like something out of Midsummer, The Class by Taryn Toomey is known for encouraging students to scream at the top of their lungs as they perform burpees and pike push-ups, and instructors coo new agey encouragement. Notice how you're feeling. Release what's stagnant and ignite a new fire. Intensati's blend of zingy rhyming affirmations with metaphysical yoga vocabulary sounds like occultists casting spells. To folks with low cringe thresholds who have a hard time suspending their disbelief, the Montells, for example, the fanatical chanting and cheering trigger tableaus of religious extremism and pyramid scheme rallies. To outsiders, just knowing their friends and family are capable of conforming to such behaviors can feel unsettling. Across the board, cult workout language tends to be ritualistic and rarefied because it's good for business. The loaded mantras and monologues are designed to create an experience so stirring that people can't resist coming back and spreading the word. Certainly, exercise brands have always capitalized on peer pressure to generate return customers. Group weigh-ins, fitness trackers. When my parents got Apple Watches, I beheld them ruthlessly vie for the highest number of steps every day for a summer. But competition alone, research suggests, is not enough to keep folks committed. Exercisers driven only by numbers tend to quit within 12 months. It's when elements of belonging, self-worth, and empowerment enter the picture that members are moved to renew their fitness memberships year after year. Language is the glue that binds that addictive combo of community and motivation. With this in mind, it's important not to over-dramatize, and as a whole, woo-woo workout mantras are very different from the deceptive, reality-warping dogma of leaders like Marshall Applewhite or Rich DeVos. I can safely say that most cult fitness rhetoric I came across wasn't camouflaging evil motives, and importantly, there tended to be boundaries separating it from the rest of members' lives. By and large, it obeyed the rules of ritual time. At the end of a cult workout class, you're allowed to clock out and start talking like yourself again. And most people do, because when participants engage with the language of cult fitness, it's usually with open eyes. Unlike in Amway or Heaven's Gate, most followers know they're participating in a fantasy, that they're not really entrepreneurs or in craft, or champions and warriors, as it were. Whether instructors are using the language of ancient monks, motivational speakers, Olympic coaches, the army, or some mishmash, it's all a means of creating an illusion. The words and intonation put exercisers in a transcendent headspace, but just for the length of a class. If it gets to be too much, followers are free to tap out at any time without life-ruining exit costs. To go back to the kink analogy, fitness studios have their followers consent. At least, they're supposed to. However, as we've learned, wherever there are magnetic leaders charging money for meaning, there's the chance for things to go awry. There's a reason cult fitness language feels so otherworldly. It's to make these classes feel essential not only to followers' health, but to their lives as a whole. Just as much as it's there to provide the follower a stimulating experience, it's to psychologically attach them to the instructor, as if this fitness class, this guru, holds the ultimate answers to their happiness. When language blurs the lines separating fitness teacher, celebrity, therapist, spiritual leader, sex symbol, and friend, it starts to mess with ritual time. When that happens, the power instructors wield can tread into exploitative territory. And of course, no fitness company thinks, you know what, maybe our brand is becoming too influential. Maybe we should cool it on the chanting. After all, they're actively trying to gain a cult following. It's the whole point. Brands know that language is the key to accomplishing this, and they don't hold back. Like the studio's own version of the Ten Commandments, SoulCycle's studio walls are emblazoned with mantras that envelop writers into a unified we. We aspire to inspire, reads the 2-foot-tall print. We inhale intention and exhale expectation. The rhythm pushes us harder than we ever thought possible. Our own strength surprises us every time. Addicted, obsessed, unnaturally attached to our bikes. All you're objectively doing is riding a stationary bicycle in a big loud room that smells good. But when the narrative surrounding you, literally written on the walls, is one of tapping into a strength you didn't know you had, alongside other people who are just as addicted, obsessed, you feel like you're a part of something more. Add a blast of mood-boosting endorphins to the mix, and you find yourself in a state of uncanny euphoria that you'll want to spread like a missionary to all your friends and coworkers. I'm an educated, skeptical person, but it just feels so fucking good to let go of all of that for 45 minutes in a dark room where no one can see you cry because someone told you you're worthy, said Chani, a friend of mine from college, in defense of her SoulCycle obsession. Chani does not identify as religious. In fact, when I asked, she scoffed at the insinuation. SoulCycle is just a place where you can escape being what you have to be as a discerning, self-possessed woman trying to succeed, she qualified. You can just give yourself over to the culty lady telling you what to do. It's like womb regression in there. You get to be like, I'm a tiny scared baby, and then you come out and you're like, yeah, I bought $120 Lululemons, and fuck you. To be fair, like sexual nerdiness, the grunting and chanting can seem freaky to outsiders in part for the same reason they feel so damn good to insiders. It's that aspect of surrender, of letting down your guard as a poised individual in order to enmesh yourself in the vulnerable, amorphous, feel-good blob of the experience. Naturally, that's going to look weird to someone just peering in. No one looks cool at SoulCycle, Chani laughed. And even with the potential to go wrong, the language of cult fitness can be incredibly healing. Changing the language of the fitness industry from talk of patriarchal body hatred to talk of goddess-like power was the whole reason Patricia Moreno founded Intensati in the first place. In the late 1990s, group fitness class rhetoric was largely about working off the sins of the food you'd consumed, about sculpting your tummy and thighs to conform to some normative vision of a bikini body. After a lifelong personal struggle with eating disorders and diet drug misuse, Moreno was driven to alter this damning narrative. She decided she was going to take her athletic expertise and combine it with positive affirmations so her students could become spiritually fit as well as physically fit. Moreno created a new vocabulary of 60 metaphorical names for workout moves, so instead of saying punch or squat or lunge, the movements would be called strong and gratitude and commitment. Each month, she'd choose a theme for her classes and come up with incantations to reflect it. She took inspiration from yoga's Dharma talk and began each class with a story about a personal struggle from her life. So if we are talking about strength that month, I'd tell a story about a time I had to be strong, like through my miscarriage, she explained to me in an interview. Then the incantations would say, I can do hard things. I am better than before. I am born to drive. I'm glad I'm alive. She spits a sequence of rhyming mantras like spoken word poetry. At first, Moreno's students rolled their eyes at the idea of incantations. The tough-as-nails Manhattanites weren't interested in a talk therapy session. They wanted their asses kicked. Wasn't getting shouted at about their muffin tops the only way to achieve that? Natalia was one of those world-weary New York trainees. That is, until a few weeks in, when she found herself earnestly shouting, My body is my temple. I am the keeper of my health. I am love in action. All is well. At every Intensati class she could make time for. By then, she was a convert. SoulCycle 2 concocts specific movement language pairings to metaphorically catapult writers toward their dreams. Every SoulCycle journey follows a similar course, its climax falling on a strenuous Hills Odyssey narrated by a hair-raising sermon. Riders turn up their bikes' resistance and climb with all their might to the symbolic finish line as their instructor douses them in verbal inspiration. SoulCycle instructors are trained to wait for these moments, when students are so physically beat that they'll be more receptive to kernels of spirituality to deliver their best lines. One SoulCycle star known far and wide for her Hills monologues was Los Angeles-based Angela Manuel Davis, Beyoncé and Oprah's spin instructor of choice. A proud evangelical Christian, Manuel Davis wielded explicitly religious verbiage on the bike, talk of Genesis, angels, and miracles. Enthusiasm comes from the Greek word entheos, which means in God, she'd preach, thrusting her arms toward the heavens. Divine inspiration, divine inspiration. I want you to be enthusiastic and excited about this opportunity to close the gap between where you are in your life and where you were called, created, and intended to be. Every single one of you was created in purpose, on purpose, for a purpose. With a deep understanding of religious speech's performative power, Manuel Davis told audiences, "Life and death is in the power of the tongue. You have the ability to unlock somebody's greatness by your words, not only to the people in your life, but to yourself. You are who you say you are." These are some hardcore evangelical buzzwords, but Manuel Davis attested she wasn't using them to create insiders and outsiders, or to make others conform to her ideology. "I give people room to make it about what they need," she told Harvard Divinity School. "This is about individual faith and spirituality." Those who weren't feeling it didn't have to take Manuel Davis's credo with them outside the studio, or even come back at all. But a whole lot of people did. Manuel Davis's classes were known to sell out within minutes. Then, in 2016, an attendee got injured in Manuel Davis's class and filed a lawsuit. To the devastation of her many acolytes, Manuel Davis resigned from SoulCycle in 2019 to launch a boutique fitness cult of her own called Army, in partnership with another former SoulCycle idol named Akin Akman, whose loyal gaggle of fiendish writers were known as Akin's Army. "I don't go to Angela to get a workout. I go to hear a message," one writer professed. "Angela sees you. She speaks to your soul." Even with more agnostic instructors, the language rituals of boutique fitness classes mimic those of religious services. Whether it surrounds God or crushing your goals, rituals help people feel like they're a part of something greater. As Casper ter Kuile put it, they're a connective tissue tool. Ritual also temporarily removes a person from the center of their own little universe, their anxieties, their everyday priorities. It helps mentally transition followers from worldly, self-focused humans to one piece of a holy group. And then, theoretically, it should allow them to transition back into real life. Just as Christian congregants will say the Lord's Prayer at the same point in church every week, Intensati instructors and attendees open each class by joining in what Moreno calls the Warrior Declaration. "Every day, in a very true way, I co-create my reality. As above, so is below. This is what I know." Like ministers inviting parishioners to mingle before a service, SoulCycle instructors encourage students to hobnob with the writers next to them. At the beginning of class, everyone has to turn and say hello, exchange a name, and chat, explained Sparky, a master instructor in Los Angeles who's been with SoulCycle since 2012. "You're going to be sweating next to them. Get to know them." It gives people an opportunity to connect, because connection is the key. November Project's boot camp-style workouts all start out the same way. Whether you're in Baltimore or Amsterdam or Hong Kong, come 6:30 a.m., participants kick off a rallying ritual called the Bounce. Gathered in a tight circle, everyone joins in the same script, their voices crescendoing into a Spartan bellow. "Good morning. Good morning. Y'all good? Fuck yeah. Y'all good? Fuck yeah." Then everyone chants, "Let's go!" At the end of the session, participants always take a group photo, turn to someone they don't know, introduce themselves, and close out with the same final line. Have a great day. Ideally, my parents and I would have tried out Intensati in person, but in April 2020, that wasn't exactly possible. 2 weeks into California's COVID-19 quarantine, we were forced to exercise at home. I figure, though, if my thesis about language and power is correct, then Patricia's incantations should compel me even through a screen. I didn't actually think they'd work, of course. On paper, the workout coalesces two things I gravely detest: cardio, blech, and group activities that require you to awkwardly shout things out loud. In Los Angeles, where I live, a new cult workout brand pops up every day, and I've rolled my eyes at them all. But there I was, 4 incantations into an Intensati class, jumping around and laugh-crying like the suckers I've always scorned. After our mini-workout, my mom went off to perform a few solo sun salutations, while I immediately looked up Patricia Moreno's virtual class schedule thinking, shit, is this what conversion feels like? 3. Fitness may be the new religion, but instructors are the new clergy. The cult workout empire would be nothing without its Patricia Morenos and Angelo Manuel Davises, who do so much more than guide classes. Instructors learn followers' names, Instagram handles, and personal life details. They hand out their cell phone numbers and counsel followers on matters as grave as whether they should divorce their spouse or quit their job. They share intimate stories and hardships from their own lives and invite followers to reciprocate. Followers form deep-rooted loyalties to their favorite teachers and start referring to classes not by brand name, but by instructor name. It's not, I'm going to Soul Cycle at 4 p.m. today and 6 p.m. tomorrow, but I'm going to Angela's class today and Sparky's class tomorrow. A workout brand is not so much a cult as it is a collection of cults, remarked Crystal O'Keefe, a project manager by day and Peloton apostle by night. Crystal runs a Peloton-themed podcast and blog called The Clip Out and is known to her few thousand followers as Clip Out Crystal. July 15, 2016 is the day I received my Peloton. I remember it so well, she wrote to me sentimentally, like the beginning to her memoir. I now have completed almost 700 rides. Launched on Kickstarter in 2013, Peloton is a subscription-based fitness app offering all kinds of online workout classes, termed shows in corporate Peloton speak. There's dance aerobics, yoga, Pilates, and by far its most popular offering, spin. Thousands of participants log on from their garages and basements to ride their $2,000 Peloton brand stationary bikes, which stream the shows from built-in touchscreen monitors. Because Peloton classes are hosted online as opposed to in limited studio spaces, thousands of riders can take the same class at once. In 2018, the app streamed a Thanksgiving turkey burn, which 19,700 users attended at the exact same time. 5 years after their initial crowdfunding campaign, Peloton had raised almost $1 billion and was deemed the first ever fitness unicorn. A wellness editor I used to work with assured me that Peloton's virtual model, which is simple and non-proprietary, is without question the future of boutique fitness. A prediction that seems even likelier post-COVID-19 when workout studios were forced to digitize overnight or die. On the Peloton app, each rider chooses a username, the cheekier the better. There are entire subreddits dedicated to cute Peloton handle names, at Rides for Chocolate, at Will Spin for Zin, at Clever Username, and has access to everyone's speeds, resistance levels, and ranks. These stats appear on a leaderboard on one side of the screen, which adds a gamified edge to the experience. After class, writers exchange digital shoutouts, take virtual selfies with their beloved instructors, and post their numbers on social media, hashtagged in bulk with hashtag PeloFam, hashtag Peloton Mom, hashtag One Peloton, etc. So their internet pals can like, share, and comment. Keep up the energy! Which instructor is your fave? Clip-Out Crystal has several faves. She rotates between 5 or 6 Peloton instructors and described them each with adoration and specificity. She spoke of gritty, no-nonsense Robin, who says things like, "You can't buy hustle at the dollar store," and "I only ride with royalty, straighten that crown." Then there are the softies who narrate with easygoing sentiments like, "It's not that deep. Just do your best," and "If you can't smile, you're going too hard." She also told me about Peloton's crown jewel instructor, Jen Sherman, known as JSS to her thousands of diehards. JSS is the subject of a robust Facebook fan page called the JSS Tribe, populated by groupies who would follow her anywhere. A cult within a cult within a cult. Boasting an upbeat BFF charisma, Sherman sings on the bike, always endearingly off-key, to her greatest hits playlists and curses during difficult climbs. "Each F-word pushes me harder," rhapsodized Clip-Out Crystal, who acknowledges that without a strong oratory style, a Peloton instructor couldn't build a cult following. Speech is what constructs that little world inside the screen, making each relationship between guru and follower feel intimate, like Joaquin Phoenix and Scarlett Johansson's voice in the movie Her. Companies like Peloton and SoulCycle know that the cultish mystique of hotshots like JSS is everything. So higher-ups put immense effort into recruiting magnetic instructors and training them to develop a unique vibe and vocabulary, a mini cult of their own. Naturally, not just any LA Fitness hottie can teach spin. You need star power. You need duende. And brands have devised formidable recruitment strategies to find it. SoulCycle doesn't scout fitness trainers, they seek performers. Dancers, actors, influencers. Savvy social butterfly types who know how to captivate an audience, who thrive on that dynamic. Instructors need to cultivate a social media persona to live and breathe the brand even off the clock, even to strangers on the phone. When SoulCycle vet Sparky and I first got on our call, I began with a customary, "Hi, how are you?" expecting your average, "Good" or "Fine." Silly me, Sparky, as her name suggests, never shuts off. "I'm fabulous, babe!" she exploded with such speed and buoyancy, I felt winded just listening. "Better than ever, busier than ever. I'm so busy I don't even remember what this interview is about. Nice to meet you. Who are you again?" SoulCycle's talent team holds intense Broadway theater-esque auditions where the first round of aspiring principals is allotted 30 seconds to hop on a bike, blast a song, and show they've got what it takes. Finalists enter a rigorous 10-week instructor training program where they learn to talk the talk. They pick up all the exclusive terminology, party hills, warm-up exercises, tap backs, a signature move involving zesty backward butt thrusting, roosters, 5 a.m. classes, and the Type A writers who take them, noon on Monday, a slogan referencing when class bookings open up each week, and how to make everything sound soulful with a capital S. Peloton's exclusive recruitment process is arguably even more intense, since their online model allows them to maintain a tight roster of only 20 or so top-tier instructors. To earn initiation into the elite Peloton fam, aspirants are put through hours of interviews and callbacks with everyone from marketing experts to producers, and then months of training to guarantee they've got the magnetism to attract thousands to every show. Sparky, a born and bred LA vegan with lilac hair and sleeves of rainbow tattoos, gained her passionate SoulCycle following with a repertoire of kitschy, old-school mottos inspired by her grandfather, Anything worth doing is worth doing well. It's not how you start, it's how you fucking finish. She spent several years heading SoulCycle's training program, helping newbies find their voice as instructors. The key to creating the following is to sound authentic. When you sound like popcorn, people can hear it, Sparky told me. She recalled one 19-year-old trainee who was worried about what words of wisdom she could possibly offer writers. And I was like, you're not going to stand in front of the women surviving cancer or the dad supporting a whole family and give them life wisdom. If you're like, I know times are hard, you're going to get through this, they're going to look at you and be like, what do you know, child? Instead, be the joyous, young, fun being that you are. If you're like, do you guys want to party and have a good time? They're going to be like, yeah, my life sucks right now and I just want to fucking party. This combination of optics, from followers' melodramatic message t-shirts, weightlifting is my religion, all I care about is my Peloton, and like 2 people, to the liturgical rituals, to the super intimate instructor-student relationships, seems like overkill. Most of the fitness buffs I spoke to copped to this, but they also professed that the benefits vastly outweigh the negatives. Once you get hooked on a workout community, not only are you going to continue, you're also going to evangelize it to all your friends to prove this thing is actually incredible and that you're not really in a cult. Or at least not a cult any worse than the culture that created you. 4. In the U.S., we are taught to fetishize self-improvement. Fitness is a particularly compelling form of self-improvement because it demonstrates classic American values like productivity, individualism, and a commitment to meeting normative beauty standards. The language of cult fitness, be your best self, change your body, change your mind, change your life, helps connect aspects of religion, like devotion, submission, and transformation, to secular ideals like perseverance and physical attractiveness. Earnestly seeking out a fringe religious community would be a stretch for many modern citizens, but following that shot of woo-woo with the chaser of capitalistic ambition makes it go down a little smoother. With groups from Intensati to CrossFit, we've created the secular cults we deserve. There was a period in history when exercise and American Protestantism overlapped more explicitly. In the 19th century, long before it was customary for everyday people to work out at all, some of the only groups that devoutly exercised were Christian Pentecostals, who promoted fitness as an overtly religious purification process. To them, idleness and gluttony were offenses punishable by God, while disciplining the flesh through grueling strength training and fasting was a sign of virtue. For them, lazing around the house while eating junk food was not a metaphorical sin, but a literal one. By contrast, some churches nowadays actively condemn modern gym culture as an over-celebration of the self as opposed to God. CrossFit is not like church. It is more like the hospital, or even the morgue, critiqued a Virginia-based Episcopal priest in a 2018 blog post. It is not a place where bad people go to be made good, but a place where bad people are loved in their badness. The grace of God is the only salvation plan that does not lead to burnout. It's hard to conduct a productive conversation with someone who's arguing that their understanding of spirituality is the only valid one. It's also undeniable that American workout culture carries a strong Protestant charge of its own. Just look at the general vocabulary we use to talk about fitness: cleanse, detox, purify, obedience, discipline, perfection. These terms have unquestionably biblical undertones, and when repeated day after day, the language of cleansing and purification can condition listeners to believe that achieving perfect fitness is possible if you try hard enough, and that it will, in turn, perfect their whole life. This mentality can feel like a soothing Epsom salt bath in a society that leaves so many citizens feeling existentially high and dry. At the same time, it can make participants more vulnerable to getting involved, and staying involved, with a potentially power-abusive guru. I'm not the first to notice that the conflation of the work we do on our bodies and the value of our humanity can sound eerily Amwayian. You can hear it in statements like, "You can get inner peace and flat abs in an hour," a promise Tess Roaring, former CMO of Core Power Yoga, made of the brand in 2016. The fitness industry's maximalist ethos that throwing yourself wholeheartedly into a program, that working harder and faster, never quitting, and intensely believing in yourself will give you flat abs and inner peace, is uncannily reminiscent of the prosperity gospel. This Amway-esque ambience is subtler in some studios than it is in others, but across platforms, a single promise resonates. Your body fat percentage will drop and your gluteus will elevate, and so will your life's value, but only through sweaty, high-priced labor. You can hear swells of new thought in CrossFit's unswerving more is more rhetoric. Capitalizing on the athletic vernacular and warlike delivery of a drill sergeant, CrossFit trainers, or coaches, as they're called on the inside, bellow slogans like beast mode, no guts, no glory, sweating or crying. The burden of failure is far heavier than that barbell, and puking is acceptable, blood is acceptable, quitting is not. Invoking rituals like hero wads, hero workouts of the day, move sequences named after fallen members of the military and law enforcement, they manufacture the atmosphere of soldiers in training. CrossFit boasts a staunchly libertarian atmosphere, derived from the personal politics of its founder, Greg Glassman, who has famously uttered quotes like, "Routine is the enemy," and "I don't mind being told what to do, I just won't do it." It's no coincidence, then, that the CrossFit climate is one of lawlessness, where within the anarchical universe of the box, followers are not only allowed, but encouraged to work out so hard they vomit, urinate, or end up in the hospital. Jason, a cancer survivor and ex-CrossFitter who joined his local box on a quest of self-empowerment after finishing chemotherapy, was forced to quit after developing chronic shoulder pain and a knee injury so severe it required surgery. In a 2013 Medium post about his experience, he wrote, "The first year was exhilarating. I began bragging about my lifting numbers and quickly amped up the frequency of my visits from 3 to 4, then 5 days per week. Without even realizing it, I became that evangelizing asshole." But eventually, CrossFit's ungovernable rhetoric, which conditions members to believe that pushing their bodies to injury is inevitable and even admirable, caught up to Jason. The messed up part is that injuries in CrossFit are seen as badges of honor. The price of getting righteously ripped, bro, he revealed. In some cases, getting seriously ripped can cost you your vital organs. Experts have noted a strong association between CrossFit and rhabdomyolysis, a rare medical condition that results from working your muscles so hard that they break down and release toxic proteins into the bloodstream, which can cause kidney damage or failure. CrossFit coaches are so familiar with the condition that they've given it a nickname, Uncle Rhabdo. In some boxes, you'll find depictions of Uncle Rhabdo as a sickly clown hooked up to a dialysis machine, his kidneys spilling onto the floor. Pukey, a different ghoulish clown, is a more prominent mascot. Online, I found a handful of t-shirts for sale featuring the slogan, "Go until you rhabdo." So, when he complained to his coaches about the shoulder and knee pain he was experiencing, they gaslit him into thinking it was all his fault. "You're supposed to push yourself to the limit," Jason wrote, "but when you hit the limit and pay the price, you're the idiot who went too far." No guts, no glory may be a tagline, but it's also among the thought-terminating cliches CrossFit might use to silence your grievances. Many of the fitness fiends I spoke to argued that their group couldn't possibly be a real cult because everybody is welcome. And while I agree that you can't really compare SoulCycle and CrossFit to the likes of Heaven's Gate and Scientology, inclusivity isn't the reason. Why would they have dedicated so much energy to creating a whole exclusive code language if it were? Needless to say, most Americans can't afford to spend thousands, if not tens of thousands, a year on exercise, not to mention the millions of folks who are BIPOC, disabled, and/or above a size 4, whom the messaging of these studios often subtly or overtly ostracizes. Many high-end workout studios adopt a very similar version of the white, feminist, #girlboss messaging that can be found in MLMs. I probably shouldn't have been surprised when, a few months after our interview, Sparky, the SoulCycle instructor, became a distributor for non-toxic skincare MLM, Arbonne. #bossbabe, Instagram posts, and all. The prosperity gospel says that if you don't succeed in becoming the picture of flawless fitness, if you don't acquire the six-pack and the inner peace, like if you are poor, marginalized, and can't clear the structural hurdles keeping you from those things, then you deserve to be unhappy and die early. You didn't manifest. It's Rich DeVos's same message, just delivered in a slightly different dialect. It might sound cloyingly heartfelt to roar, "I am powerful beyond measure," while punching the air as hard as you can. But it's nowhere near as spooky as yoga studios full of rich white women wearing the same overpriced athleisure, possibly embellished with a bastardized Sanskrit pun. Om is where the heart is. Namaste. My chakras are aligned AF. And calling themselves a tribe. Commodifying the language of Eastern and indigenous spiritual practices for an elitist white audience while erasing and shutting out their originators might not seem culty, it might just seem commonplace, which is exactly the problem. For years, CrossFit HQ denied any suggestion that its culture was unwelcoming to Black members. But during the Black Lives Matter protests in June 2020, Greg Glassman shot off a series of racist emails and tweets. In one, he responded to a post about racism as a public health crisis with, "It's Floyd-19," prompting white CrossFitters to finally start coming around to what many Black folks had known for decades. The place was not really for everyone. And the linguistic red flags had always been there. By glorifying the police in the names of its hero wads, CrossFit had been telling on itself all along. Hundreds of gyms disaffiliated with the brand, big activewear companies pulled their contracts, and Glassman stepped down as CEO. A few months after Glassman's fall from grace, it was SoulCycle's turn for a scandal. In late 2020, things were already going south for the company due to COVID-19 lockdowns, forcing location closures left and right, when multiple damning exposés surfaced online. According to reporting from Vox, underneath all the motivational soul speak, studios across the country harbored long track records of toxicity. Cults of personality formed around certain master instructors who took advantage by creating hierarchies of favorite and least favorite clients, giving private, off-the-clock rides, and allegedly sleeping with some students. "Your riders should want to be you or fuck you," was a mantra instructors reportedly learned and internalized. One all-star openly referred to her riders as little sluts. Some top instructors were known for verbally bullying riders and lesser employees, as well as stoking all the studio drama that surrounded them, relishing in their deification like high school queen bees. Purportedly, SoulCycle HQ knew of and condoned the bad behavior, covering up complaints about its most prized instructors making bigoted side comments to writers and staff. Let's just say they involve the words Aunt Jemima and twinks and calling curvy staffers not on brand. Reports of sexual harassment had allegedly been ignored as well. The company treated instructors like Hollywood stars anyway, read one headline, which Natalia Petrozella DM'd me the hour it broke. Insiders reported that higher-ups threw complaints in the trash while bankrolling one implicated instructor's $2,400 Soho House membership and rental Mercedes-Benz like nothing happened. This news didn't exactly come as a shock. When you elevate instructors as godlike, abuses of power will follow, Natalia tweeted. It makes sense that we saw this kind of reckoning first in yoga, where leaders have long been revered as gurus. It was only a matter of time for instructors with a cult following. I read a 2020 study from the European Journal of Social Psychology revealing that folks who received spiritual training in certain supernatural crafts like energy healing and light work were more prone to narcissistic tendencies, bloated confidence in their abilities, increased hunger for success and social approval, denigration of anyone lacking their self-evaluated superpowers, etc. This was compared to people who hadn't gone through any spiritual training at all, as well as students studying less performative disciplines like meditation and mindfulness. The study showed that even as these gurus encouraged compassion and self-acceptance in others, their own egos swelled. Master soul cycle instructors seem to display a similar response. Existing pride in their natural charisma, combined with the company's extreme training, is the recipe for a god complex closer to that of a 3HO swami than an ordinary mortal employed to teach stationary cycling. As of this writing, SoulCycle hasn't commented on the specific accusations or fired any alleged abusers. And CrossFit loyalists have ensured that their beloved culture, hero wads, beast mode and all, lives on, no matter the brand name. Some say the mark of a truly successful cult is the power to outlast the death or cancellation of its founder. In that case, CrossFit and SoulCycle, alongside Scientology and Amway, have prevailed, at least so far. Certainly, the whitewashed Protestant capitalism-fueled language of namaste, detoxing, and harder, faster, more reflects and perpetuates oppressive standards that go beyond fitness. We can find talk of tribes and push to your max in so many American industries, from Wall Street to Hollywood to Silicon Valley. This language is pervasive and troublesome, no doubt, but its motives and impact are also importantly different from those of figures like Jim Jones, L. Ron Hubbard, and Rich DeVos. In the case of these leaders, the goal was not so much to reinforce the problematic power structures of our larger society, but more to exploit followers in a way that directly benefited the guru and only the guru. One type of leader uses language, perhaps even unwittingly, to support frameworks that already exist. The other uses language, always deliberately, not to uphold the current order of things, but instead to swoop in and create something tyrannically new. In the end, some problematic leaders are really just followers of the larger system. But a truly destructively cultish leader is one who wishes to overthrow the system and replace it with something that grants them ultimate power. 5. If a fitness brand or leader falls closer to the Scientology end of the cultish spectrum, you'll hear it. Tune in to the loaded language, us versus them verbiage, thought terminators, and verbal abuse that make up the language of cultish influence, and the leader's motives will ring loud and clear. Examine, for instance, the speech of ill-famed hot yoga guru Bikram Choudhury. Long before he was sued for sexual assault and fled the United States, Bikram Yoga's eponymous founder was a well-known egomaniac and bully. In the early 1970s, Choudhury moved from Calcutta to Los Angeles, where he created his hot yoga empire, which boasted 1,650 studios worldwide at its peak in 2006. During his glory days, Choudhury enjoyed a litany of nicknames that reflected his bellicose cult of personality. The anti-yogi, the Walter White of yoga, the crowned head of Mick Yoga. He shattered visions of the peaceful, meditative yoga master by screaming, cursing, and name-calling in class. The content of his profanity-filled caterwauling wasn't Peloton-style inspirational, but instead shamelessly misogynist, racist, and fat-shaming. Suck that fat fucking stomach in. I don't like to see the jiggle. Black bitch. Chicken shit. These are direct quotes, loudly proclaimed in public. In his famous teacher trainings, Choudhury preached to sweltering halls of 500-plus aspiring Bikram instructors who'd each paid between $10,000 and $15,000 for the opportunity to follow him. Poised on a high throne, always equipped with a personal air conditioner, he would bellow call and responses, making no attempt to hide his megalomania. Choudhury would exclaim, "It's my way or the," and the group would call back in unison, "Highway." The best food is no food. Of course, no one would ever stick around if all Choudhury did was insult people. Like most toxic figures, the slurs and screaming were juxtaposed with the seductive language of love bombing. Inside of a minute, Choudhury might decree your potential to become a brilliant teacher, call you a bitch, and then serenade you with his mellifluous singing voice, all while you contorted your body into near-impossible poses in blistering heat. But devotees of Choudhury swore he was like a big kid. His lullabies and moodiness, even his tantrums, gave him an innocent, adorable factor, they attested. Confirmation bias allowed fans to interpret Choudhury's blatant lies. He gloated about winning yoga competitions that never even took place, and statements of grandeur, "I don't even sleep 30 hours a month. I'm the smartest man in the world you ever met. I'm the only friend you've had in your life." As childlike rather than disturbed. The sunk cost fallacy told them he'd make their careers if they just attended one more training. During his hot yoga workshops, Choudhury's pupils were known to pass out, suffer dehydration, and develop upper respiratory infections. Because they were conditioned to trust their beloved guru as all-knowing, they learned to disregard their own pain and gut instincts. Choudhury was also accused of grooming and sexually assaulting at least half a dozen female trainees. In 2016, the man responded to rape allegations with more us versus them name-calling, hyperbole, and gaslighting. A parody of himself, Choudhury denounced his accusers as psychopaths and trash, adding, "Why would I have to harass women? People spend $1 million for a drop of my sperm." In 2016, Choudhury fled the U.S. without paying the nearly $7 million he owed survivors in punitive damages, and a year later, a Los Angeles judge issued a warrant for his arrest. As of this writing, he has not been brought to justice and continues to lead teacher trainings outside the U.S. As soon as Choudhury's American empire crumbled, another controversial yoga cult took its place. Core Power. After the fall of Bikram, Denver-based Core Power Yoga swept in and rapidly became the largest yoga chain in America. While Bikram proudly claimed to be the McDonald's of yoga, Core Power's co-founder, the now deceased tech mogul Trevor Tice, self-branded as the Starbucks of yoga. Over the following decade, Core Power faced 5 federal lawsuits for the financial exploitation of its instructors and clients, having to forfeit over $3 million in settlements. Not dissimilar to a pyramid scheme, the studio pays instructors an unlivable hourly wage, promising raises and promotions only to those who recruit students to its $1,500 teacher training program. Core Power instructors are told to deliver their teacher training pitches at the end of class, after savasana, the final resting pose. While practitioners lie in a relaxed, loosey-goosey puddle, teachers offer what Core Power calls a personal share, an intimate disclosure from their lives, and they're told to make it soul-rocking. Soul-rocking is a benchmark piece of Core Power-loaded language. Instructors' performance is, in fact, judged on how many souls they're able to rock, aka how many students they can get to sign up for teacher training. After the personal share, instructors are urged to target individual students, love bomb them with compliments about their skills and dedication, and offer to buy them a Starbucks to tell them about becoming a teacher themselves. It was like they saw something special in me, Kali, a Core Power student from Minnesota, told the New York Times in 2019. Kali had just finished class one day and was feeling all mellow when her favorite instructor approached her with a wide smile and told her she thought Kali had the chops to do her jobs. She didn't disclose the cost of teacher training. They tell instructors to keep that part open-ended. She just showered Kali with praise and followed up repeatedly both in and out of the studio. It felt like we had a friendship that was really actually not real, Kali reflected. When Kali finally found out about the $1,500 price tag, she'd already been fantasizing for weeks about her dreamy future yoga career. She couldn't decline now. Kali wrote the check and went through the 8-week program. Only at the end did she find out it didn't actually qualify her to teach. Like Scientology's levels, Core Power waited until they knew she wouldn't back out before they mentioned she had to complete an additional $500 extensions course. Kali ponied up once more. But even after that, Core Power never offered her a job. That's because their training program produces a glut of certified teachers who saturate the market, just like an MLM. A 2016 survey reported that there are 2 hopefuls in some form of teacher training for every employed instructor. You're being taught to be calm and breathe, but at the same time being taken advantage of, Kali told the press. One of the phrases Core Power weaponized most successfully was, "return the karma," an emotionally charged euphemism and thought-terminating cliché wrapped into one. In Hinduism, karma yoga is one of 3 paths to spiritual liberation. It's learning to lead a life of selfless service, expecting nothing in return. But at Core Power, return the karma was invoked to coerce teachers into substituting for each other's classes and performing hours of mandatory work outside the studio. Class prep, email customer service, marketing for the brand, all without pay. By calling on such a profound spiritual phrase with eternal implications, the company could succinctly trigger guilt and loyalty in its employees. If someone wanted to question an unfair policy, Core Power could just point to karma to smother their claim. Court documents reveal that Core Power's own lawyers discredit karma as a vacant, metaphysical precept in the same nonsense language category as soul-rocking. But for followers, it was loaded enough to retain their allegiance even when they knew the company was screwing them. Kali left her Core Power career dreams behind to become a registered nurse, but continues to take yoga classes at a local Core Power studio. In order to afford her $120 monthly membership, she receives no discount for having gone through teacher training. She works as a cleaner at a different Core Power location once a week. On the side, she teaches goat yoga. They really do have everything now. At a small farm in the Minneapolis suburbs. Her bio proudly reads, Core Power Trained Instructor. 6. Upon finding yourself in a cultish fitness community that may or may not be entirely healthy, here are a few questions worth asking. Is this group genuinely welcoming of all different people? Or do you feel excessive pressure to dress and talk like everyone else, even outside of class? Are you allowed to participate casually, to dabble in this activity? Or do you find yourself putting all your time and faith in this group alone, basing all your decisions on theirs? Do you trust the instructor to tell you to slow down, maybe even take a few weeks off, or try a whole different exercise if your body needs it? Or will they only tell you harder, faster, more? If you miss a class or quit, what is the exit cost? Pride? Money? Relationships? Your whole world? Is it a price you're willing to pay? For me, it's become easier to spot the difference between a warehouse full of 500 yoga trainees war-crying that it's their leader's way or the highway, or a spin instructor debasing their students as little sluts, and a studio of 16 women who are dressed how they like and free to cancel their memberships without the threat of shame or worse, joining in a mantra like, I am stronger than I seem. Both businesses are profiting from the language, but they're also literally naming whom they want to empower. In one case, it's the guru, and in the other, it's the people. I feel like what cult fitness really means is that people are so moved by something that helps them grow and change. Intensati's Patricia Marino concluded. Because Marino's aim is so transparently to teach her students to reclaim their own personal power, as opposed to asserting her power over them, she's never felt the need to defend Intensati as not a real cult. To me, that lack of defensiveness speaks volumes. By and large, new religion experts are not terribly concerned that the drawbacks of cult fitness stack up to the likes of Scientology either. I definitely think some of these workouts are culty, but I say that with scare quotes, commented Stanford anthropologist Tanya Luhrmann. The main cult symptom Luhrmann finds in fitness buffs is the belief that if they attend classes regularly, their lives will dramatically improve overall. As long as they attend class 5 times a week and say the mantras, then that will change the way the world unfolds for them. It's that sense of excess idealism again, that conviction that this group, this instructor, these rituals, have the power to accomplish more than they probably can. It is entirely possible to exploit that faith. However, what keeps me from roasting the cult fitness industry too dramatically is that ultimately, you're in charge of your own experience. At spin class, you control the resistance on your bike. If you want to ignore the culty lady at the front of the room, or on screen, and slow down, you can. If you pray to a higher power, you can do that while chanting about divine inspiration. But if you just want to jump around and party, you can do that too. And after 6 months, if things start to get toxic or you just want to try something else, you're free to. If the bonds you built on the leaderboard are really that strong, they'll last even after you decide to switch to surfboard Pilates. After all, the studio is not what singularly gives your life meaning. It very well might bring you fulfillment and connection for 45 minutes at a time, but you'd still be you without it. You're already blessed with all you need. Part 6. Follow for follow. 1. It's June 2020, one of the most contentious months in contemporary American history, and my Instagram algorithm is on the fritz. Amid posting about the global COVID-19 pandemic and Black Lives Matter, while keeping up with all the New Age swamis, MLM recruiters, and conspiracy theorists I've followed over the past year, my Explore page can't seem to tell whether I'm a social justice warrior, a plandemic truther, an anti-vaxxer, a witch, an Amway distributor, or just really obsessed with essential oils. There's a smug satisfaction that comes with briefly allowing myself to believe I've confused the Instagram I, whose presence is so omniscient and mysterious and indispensable to me. Sometimes it feels like the only God I've ever known. I suppose I get what I deserve then, when in the midst of a 2-hour social media binge, I come across the profile of a spiritual guru named Bentinho Massaro, with an Instagram bio that reads, synthesizer of paths, true scientist, philosopher, and mirror. Massaro is a 30-something white dude who claims to vibrate at a higher frequency than other humans, higher even than Jesus Christ. Sporting 40,000 Insta followers, icy blue eyes, a robust wardrobe of tight black t-shirts, and a confident voice cloaked in some indeterminate European accent, he reads like a cross between Teal Swan and Tony Robbins. A Hemsworth would definitely play him in the movie. About a dozen proverbial red flags erect in my frontal cortex. I click follow. A deeper dive soon reveals that Bentinho Massaro was born in Amsterdam but relocated to Boulder, Colorado, and later to the occult mecca of Sedona, Arizona, to run pricey spiritual retreats. All the while, he put spectacular effort into growing his web presence, using a Silicon Valley savvy social media strategy and a portfolio of snazzy websites. He aims to sell you, well, your soul. Costing as little as an Instagram follower, or as much as $600 per hour on Skype, you can gain access to doses of Massaro's sacred science. The answers to everything from how to cultivate profound personal relationships to how to become a human god. In his YouTube videos, Massaro sits close to the camera, creating the cozy atmosphere of a home gathering or a one-on-one conversation, as he expounds upon subjects like the inner black hole, presence, energy, vibration, and cutting through the illusion of mind. Navigate over to his Instagram, and you'll find minute-long clips where Massaro just stares intensely into the lens, grinning, barely blinking, intermittently murmuring, "I love you." He calls these parasocial gaze-offs his moments of oneness, no separation between you or me. Hundreds of supporters flood his comments with praise. "You are infinite intelligence, love, light. Thank you, Ben, for this wave of consciousness. Master, teacher, you have an amazing ability. Please lead us." Massaro's ideology is, shall we say, eclectic. He believes in ancient aliens, asserts he can change the weather with his mind, and has announced that he doesn't want children because he already has 7 billion. It should sound familiar by now that Massaro insists he, and only he, possesses the God's eye view required to guide humanity toward heaven's absolute truth. His teachings, he proclaims, will lead to the cessation of suffering and endless bliss. Massaro vows that over the course of any given earthling's lifetime, they won't access even 10% of what goes on in his consciousness in a single day. His ultimate vision? To bring his internet fellowship offline, buy a big slab of land in Sedona, and build an enlightened new city. Amid lectures on paths, vibrations, and raising your frequency, some of Massaro's rhetoric takes a grim turn. His mystical vernacular is fraught with thought-terminating cliches, intended to gaslight followers into mistrusting science as well as their own thoughts and emotions. In one lesson, he commands, "Thinking about something is the surest way to miss out on the beauty of that actual something. See where you have these allegiances to logic, to reason, to linear description, and simply start destroying these." In another video, he shouts at a female student after she expresses feeling disrespected by the phrase, "fuck you," saying, "If you weren't so high up in your own ass about this fucking concept of respect, you would actually see how much love there is behind me saying what I say." Massaro always finds a twisted way to justify his use of verbal aggression. Once on Facebook, he posted, "Being friends with an awake being is nearly impossible because, A, his first priority is your purification and elevation into truth, not kindness. And B, he is not like an ordinary person and thus cannot be successfully compared with normal standards or related to as just another person, which the finite mind does not like. His shouting and cursing," he says, "are an expression of divine kindness. I can scream at you all freely," he declaims, adding that verbal abuse is a necessary part of the spiritual path and that questioning it simply reflects the lowly human's limited and opinionated mind. As with Teal Swan, Massaro's videos also promote unsafe messaging about suicide. "Don't fear death. Be excited about it," he says in one clip. "Looking forward to death makes you truly come alive. Wake up to something important. Otherwise, kill yourself." These sentiments mostly flew under the radar until December 2017, when Massaro hosted a spiritual retreat in Sedona that went horribly wrong. The 12-day New Age boot camp was promised to offer 100 guests exclusive access to Massaro's most profound teachings. By then, cult leader accusations had already started trickling onto the web. The day before the retreat, a Sedona-based reporter named B. Schofield published an incriminating exposé characterizing Massaro as a tech bro guru using growth hacker marketing to build a quack spiritual consortium, endangering followers' bodies with ridiculous health advice, like living on nothing but grape juice for weeks. Massaro called this dry fasting, manipulating them into cutting off friends and family. "Fuck your relationships, they mean nothing," he'd say, and trusting him as an all-knowing deity. On the 6th day of the Sedona retreat, an attendee named Brent Wilkins, who'd followed Massaro devotedly for years, broke away from the group. He got in his car, drove to a nearby bridge, and jumped, ending his life. News of Wilkins's death circulated hastily, and a chorus of Jim Jones comparisons quickly followed. The internet dubbed Massaro an Instagram douche meets cult leader, and Steve Jobs meets Jim Jones. Massaro was quiet for months afterward until he finally posted a response on Facebook, not addressing the death or any specific concerns, but instead firing the cult label right back at B. Schofield. In the ultimate battle of thought-terminating cliches, he avowed that Schofield was part of one of the biggest cults on our planet today, the average American cult, indoctrinated by media, scared of just about anything outside of their own family home, and ready to pull a gun out on anyone they do not understand. The day after Wilkins's death, detectives showed up at Massaro's residence to confront him about his questionable suicide messaging, but in the end, no charges were brought against him. In a culture where malignant social media interactions contribute to depression, anxiety, and suicide in such complicated ways, it was ultimately too tricky to place singular, prosecutable blame, even on a figure as disreputable as Massaro. In the end, the Brent Wilkins tragedy didn't shake the faith of, or even reach, most of Massaro's supporters, most of whom never considered following the guy beyond Instagram. Still, over the next few months, small waves of devotees quietly disconnected from him, clicked unsubscribe, excised his lingo from their vocabularies, even joined a Bettino Massaro recovery group on Facebook. Painfully, they came to the realization that their guru was just a man, poisoned by his own addiction to a cult much larger than his own, the cult of social media attention. While they once admired their spiritual rock star for using Instagram and YouTube to make infinite consciousness available to everyone, it became clear that Massaro's movement only existed to satisfy his own desire for adoration, which, thanks to the alternate universe he created for himself online, became more bottomless every day. But I guess this is what a lot of people do on the internet, commented Lynn Perry, an ex-Massaro loyalist who was close with Brent Wilkins before he died, in an interview with The Guardian. They put out a perfect persona, and without meaning to, they make other people feel like they're not good enough. And for people like Brent, for many of us really, it's just too much for the spirit to handle. 2. Flashback 2 decades before Bettinio Massaro's retreat gone wrong to 1997, the same year the very first social media site was invented. In March, when Heaven's Gate's mass suicide sent seismic panic throughout the country, everyday Americans were prompted to wonder how, oh how, could a clearly deranged, UFO-obsessed guy like Marshall Applewhite provoke such a disaster? When it was suggested that the Heaven's Gate website, a cacophony of bright fonts and extraterrestrial ramblings, might have played a role in recruiting and radicalizing followers, commentators scoffed. While one New York Times reporter called Heaven's Gate an abject lesson in the evils of the internet, a journalist from Time incredulously rebutted, "Spiritual predators? Give me a break. A web page that has the power to suck people into a suicide cult? The whole idea would be laughable if 39 people weren't dead." As far as the average 1990s imagination could stretch, cults required an in-the-flesh location to have real influence. Without a secluded commune or isolated mansion, how could anyone possibly become separated from their family and friends, have their individuality suppressed, and ideologically convert to a destructive dogma in a way that incited real-world harm? In the years since Heaven's Gate, the virtual and physical worlds have merged. For better and for worse, social media has become the medium through which millions of us construct kinship and connection in an ever-transient society. In early 2020, reporter Alain Sylvain wrote that social media and pop culture have become the modern-day campfire. It's something that 90s Time writer couldn't have predicted. A world where seekers satisfy their spiritual desires with a hodgepodge of non-religious rituals practiced largely online. It's a world where our closest confidants can be found on Beyoncé fan forums and private Peloton Facebook groups, and where one's ethics and identity are wrapped up in the influencers they follow, targeted ads they click through, and memes they repost. 20 years post Heaven's Gate, most zealous fringe groups rarely convene IRL. Instead, they build an online system of morality, culture, and community, and sometimes radicalize, with no remote commune, no church, no party, no gym. Just language. In lieu of a physical place to meet, cultish jargon gives followers something to assemble around. When I first downloaded Instagram in the summer of 2012, I couldn't help but notice how curious it seemed that the app called its account holders followers instead of friends or connections. "It's like a cult platform," I remember saying to pals. Is it not encouraging everyone to build their own little cult? I didn't even know the word influencer back then. The term didn't become popular until 2016, according to Google search data. So I couldn't have foreseen that spiritual influencers would soon become a whole category of new religious leader. Less than a decade after Instagram's launch, thousands of astrologers, self-help sages, and holistic wellness guides like Bettinio Massaro and Teal Swan, who might have never even developed an interest in metaphysics before the internet, much less monetized it, use apps and algorithms to spread their gospel. These digital gurus fulfill modern America's renewed demand for New Age ideas with images of tarot readings, updates on the cosmos, and abstract talk of frequency fields and galactic perspectives. Their high-octane feeds provide just as much eye candy as a beauty or lifestyle influencer, but the promises are far greater. The Instagram mystic doesn't operate on a business model, but a spiritual mission. They aren't just selling SpawnCon and merch, but transcendent wisdom, Double tap and subscribe, and you'll obtain access to higher vibrations, alternate dimensions, even life beyond death. I've asked myself if Buddha or Jesus lived today, would they have a Facebook page? Bentinho Massaro posed in a 2019 interview, adding that he finds that Instagram lends itself particularly well to the divine. "The pictures have an energy," he told the reporter, his glacial eyes glittering. Brent Wilkins's suicide was a rare and concretely tragic example of the fate that can befall a seeker who submerges too deeply in the warped reality of an online guru. But for most people, someone like Massaro is just another account to thumb past. Unlike the cults of the 70s, we don't even have to leave the house for a charismatic figure to take hold of us. With contemporary cults, the barrier to entry is the simple frisson of tapping follow. Not every spiritual influencer is hazardous. In fact, many provide what I'd classify as a largely positive experience, offering inspiration, validation, and solace, even if just for a moment mid-scroll. In 2018, I investigated the growing phenomenon of Instagram witches for Cosmopolitan.com, and what I found was a diverse coalition of millennial women and non-binary people growing devoted digital followings with whom they attentively engaged over recipes for plant-based tinctures and astrological insights. This community of online witches seemed like a haven for many LGBTQ+ and BIPOC folks who felt unwelcome in so many old-school religious spaces. They'd be practicing their craft either way. Instagram simply gave them a platform to share it and make a real living out of it. Almost everyone I investigated seemed genuinely motivated by helping people above anything else, and no one used the thought-terminating cliches, circuitous euphemisms, or other intentionally deceptive tactics that we now know constitute the worst kind of cultish language. But inevitably, the clout-hungry always find their way to social media, a machine that works to fuel our scammiest, most narcissistic tendencies. Reporter Oscar Schwartz wrote for The Guardian that as far as algorithms are concerned, there is little difference between the genuine and pernicious guru. Spiritual influencers are sanctified by the apps for the same reason any other content creator is, because their posts are on-trend and hyper-engaging. They exchange regrammable quotegrams full of buzzy wellness vernacular for ego-boosting likes and ad dollars, profiting from Apple Pay-enabled seekers aiming to soothe the distress and ennui of contemporary existence. Because their actual beliefs take a back seat to the success of their brand, these gurus are willing to fudge them according to whatever the zeitgeist seems to want. If CBD supplements are all the rage, they'll suddenly flood their feeds with affiliate posts and act like cannabis has been part of their ideology all along. If conspiracy theory-type content seems to be doing well, they'll head in that direction, even if they don't fully understand the volatile rhetoric they're trafficking in. Spend a few minutes poking around the Bentinho Massaro burrow of Instagram, and you'll find dozens upon dozens of similar accounts. In one corner, you'll find alternative healing, opportunists masquerading as benevolent medical professionals, like Dr. Joe Dispenza, a generic-looking middle-aged white guy who well over 1 million Instagram followers somehow trust as their new age sage. Dispenza's army of adoring acolytes claim he's helped them manifest everything from their dream job to their spouse to their cancer remission. Dispenza shrewdly exploits SEO and other web marketing strategies to make millions selling an extravagant emporium of self-help workshops and retreats, public speaking engagements, corporate consultations, guided meditations, CDs, gifts, and books like Becoming Supernatural and Evolve Your Brain. Branding himself as the ultimate scientific spiritual authority, Dispenza's Instagram bio reads, researcher of epigenetics, quantum physics, and neuroscience. And he proudly flaunts his studies in biochemical sciences at Rutgers University, as well as his postgraduate training and continuing education, whatever that means, in neurology, neuroscience, brain function and chemistry, cellular biology, memory formation, and aging and longevity. Taking a page out of L. Ron Hubbard's playbook, Dispenza marries academic-sounding language with the paranormal. Examine, for instance, his definition of a quantum field. An invisible field of energy and information, or you could say a field of intelligence or consciousness that exists beyond space and time. Nothing physical or material exists there. It is beyond anything you can perceive with your senses. Needless to say, most followers don't have a background in neuroscience or quantum mechanics, so they hear the esoteric jargon and, using a System 1 thought process, they conclude that Dispenza must be legit. He's mainly speaking to people who may have little to no academic understanding of these fields, but the words are a literal inaccurate description of the quantum field, commented Azadeh Ghaffari, a licensed psychotherapist and frequent exposer of digital wellness scammers on her Instagram account @the.wellness.therapist. To say that nothing physical or material exists there is not only categorically false, but shows that this person does not have a present-day understanding of what is called the vacuum state or the quantum vacuum. Ghaffari suggests this litmus test. Anytime any New Age guru making money from the stuff they're peddling utters the words quantum anything, give them a basic physics equation. DM me for some. If they can't solve it, move along. The internet scammeth, and the internet fact-checketh away. Indeed, a quick probe reveals that Dispenza never graduated from Rutgers and has no PhD. His only diplomas include a general BS from Evergreen State College and a degree from a chiropractic school in Georgia called Life University. And yet, Google Dispenza's credentials, and his exceptionally well-optimized web presence will provide the top result. Dr. Joe Dispenza is a well-known neuroscientist. As a white man in his 50s, just the kind of guy our culture wants a neuroscientist to look and sound like, he is largely trusted without question. Because the majority of Dispenza's followers get to know him through his carefully crafted internet persona, most never dig to find out he's connected to a controversial New Age circle called Ramtha. Founded in the late 80s by a self-proclaimed ESP master and proud Trump supporter named Jay-Z Knight, Ramtha's School of Enlightenment offers lessons in subjects like telepathy and clairvoyance, promising pupils they'll be able to alter reality with their mind. Mathematician Martin Gardner once described Ramtha as kindergarten metaphysics. Knight has been quoted spewing all kinds of QAnon-esque rhetoric and generally bigoted vitriol, like that all gay men used to be Catholic priests. But Ramtha devotees, which have included a handful of A-list celebrities, hear what they want to hear and ignore the rest. In a nearby zip code of the guru sphere, you'll find 20-something women adding an anti-establishment flavor to aspirational insta-baddie branding. Blonde and blue-eyed, Heather Hoffman, at Activation Vibration, is typically found bralette-clad, sporting an ornate septum piercing alongside appropriative face jewels. Her ultra-produced, triple-filtered images feature rainbow lens flares and jewel-tone lotus blossoms that accompany daily affirmations just vague enough to sound profound. For example, receive the succulence of your own source, and your external seeking shall cease. Her long, convoluted captions feature a dialect of New Age speak so cryptic that insiders want to like and comment, while outsiders can't help but keep scrolling through to find out what her beliefs actually are. Integrating potent codes, quantum transformation, multi-dimensional space of time, divine alignment, upgrading your DNA, energy matrices, grids, and frequencies. In one video, Heather squats on the floor in a green bikini, playing Tibetan sound bowls, undulating her torso. Using a honeyed soprano, she begins speaking a form of glossolalia she calls light language. The comment section overflows with all kinds of divine goddess, hypnotizing, and Heather, you are next level light code. In another clip, she sits before a mandala tapestry lecturing that COVID-19 was caused by government fear propaganda, and that protecting yourself means deactivating your matrix grid of fear so as not to pollute the divine order. Heather has been reincarnated precisely to cure humans of problems like these, she says, through her ability to access Source, God, and other spiritual realms available only to her, since everyone else has fallen victim to a program. To access her wisdom, just sign up for one of her online courses, like the Cellular Activation course, Upgrade Your DNA, for $144.44, or to tap into her most exclusive wisdom, pay $4,444 for 8 one-on-one mentoring sessions. Creeping along the influence continuum toward Scientology, these figures will cajole you into buying their ebook, then their meditation playlist, then their online hypnosis course, and by that point, your spiritual journey would be worthless if you didn't sign up for a workshop or retreat. For you, it might feel like the quest for self-actualization, but for them, it's a profitable, scalable, passive income-generating cash cow. Ghaffari points out that when an online guru uses too much absolutist language, that's New Age scammer red flag number 1. Anyone who talks about the concept of feeling our past, our inner trauma, in a universal, oversimplified way, she clarifies. For example, statements like, all of us are traumatized as kids, which is why we need to X, Y, Z, or all of us are from the cosmos and we're just floating in a quantum field, blah, blah, blah. If simple quantifiers and qualifiers are absent from a guru's rhetoric, that's a sign they are likely unqualified to speak as a mental health authority and are less interested in actually helping people than they are in convincing as many followers as possible to invest in their prophetic gifts. New Age holistic psychology and wellness is not about trauma-informed care. It's about pushing pseudoscience and marketing, Ghaffari concludes. Alternative wellness gurus like Bentinho Massaro and Heather Hoffman fume about the evils of big pharma until they're blue in the face. But they push a far more deceptive form of capitalism, says Ghaffari. They don't want to sell you pills. They want to sell you a key to enlightenment they don't actually possess. To some onlookers, mystical Insta-scammers might not seem like that much of a threat. You'd have to be seriously out of touch to put real faith in these people, right? But researchers have found that the folks most attracted to New Age messaging are more with it than one might think. Michael Shermer, a science writer and founder of the Skeptic Society, has written about the correlation between intelligence and belief in weird ideas. According to Shermer, studies show that American test subjects with the lowest education levels have a higher probability of subscribing to certain paranormal beliefs, like haunted houses, satanic possession, and UFO landings. But it's test subjects with the most education who are likeliest to believe in New Age ideas, like the power of the mind to heal disease. Psychologist Stuart Weiss has remarked that the New Age movement has led to the increased popularity of supernatural ideas among groups previously thought to be immune to superstition, those with higher intelligence, higher socioeconomic status, and higher educational levels. Therefore, he remarks, the age-old view that people who believe in weird things are less intelligent than non-believers may not hold entirely true. Objectively, made-up metaphysical interpretations of quantum fields and upgrading your DNA are just as irrational as ghosts and alien visitations. but the fact that they're associated with the demographic of social media, savvy young people with college degrees, makes them seem more acceptable. It's not that smart people aren't capable of believing in cultish things. Instead, says Shermer, it's that smart people are better at defending beliefs they arrived at for non-smart reasons. Most people, even skeptics and scientists, don't come to the bulk of their beliefs for reasons having to do with empirical evidence. No one sits down and reads a bunch of scientific studies, then weighs the pros and cons before deciding to believe that, say, money equals happiness, or that cats are better than dogs, or that there's only one right way to clean a colander. Rather, Shermer says, such variables as genetic predispositions, parental predilections, sibling influences, peer pressures, educational experiences, and life impressions all shape the personality preferences and emotional inclinations that, in conjunction with numerous social and cultural influences, lead us to make certain belief choices. This is all to say, being smart and hip to the zeitgeist is not enough to protect someone from cultish influence online. And even if shady social media characters like Joe Dispenza and Bentinho Massaro don't seem like that big a deal in the grand scheme of things, by contributing to a world that values light language and sci-fi physics over real science, as if facts are just opinions, they wind up making space for more urgently dangerous groups to take advantage. It's exactly this paranoid rejection of mainstream healthcare and leadership that gave such momentum to QAnon, whose rhetoric overlaps considerably with that of the alternative wellness sphere. Great Awakening, Ascension, 5G. The diagram of QAnon and New Agers looks more circular every day. It appeared an unlikely crossover at first, that of violent right-wing conspiracy theorists and seemingly progressive hippie types. But America's ever-escalating unrest has led a disarming number of citizens, mostly white, middle-class ex-Christians, similar to the folks who joined Heaven's Gate back in the day, to a similarly anti-government, anti-media, anti-doctor place. In the early 2010s, well before QAnon, the term conspirituality, a portmanteau of conspiracy and spirituality, was introduced to describe this rapidly growing politico-spiritual movement defined by two core principles. The first, traditional to conspiracy theory, the second, rooted in the New Age. 1. A secret group covertly controls or is trying to control the political and social order, and 2. Humanity is undergoing a paradigm shift in consciousness. This definition comes from a 2011 paper from the Journal of Contemporary Religion. When the COVID-19 pandemic hit the U.S. in 2020, it was like rocket fuel feeding conspirituality's flame. Anti-vaxxers and plandemic truthers would fall squarely into the category of conspirituality, but so would plenty of less conspicuously QAnon-related wellness aficionados, the sorts who might sign up for an essential oils MLM, for example, or wear Nama Slay t-shirts to their whitewashed yoga classes, or run a holistic self-care Instagram account, the sorts who may be searched for all-natural health remedies on YouTube one night and ended up in all doctors are brainwashed conspirituality territory, unable to navigate their way out. Trickily, not every conspiritualist even knows or is willing to admit that their beliefs have anything to do with QAnon. In fact, some of these believers regard the terms QAnon, conspiracy theorist, and anti-vaxxer as offensive slurs. And the more outsiders invoke these labels, the more firmly insiders dig in their heels. After all, both camps think the other is brainwashed. In broad strokes, QAnon started in 2017 as a fringy online conspiracy theory surrounding an alleged intelligence insider called Q. The ideology began as something like this. Q, a faceless figure, swore to have proof of corrupt left-wing leaders, the deep state, or global elite, sexually abusing little kids around the world. According to Q, Donald Trump was working tirelessly to thwart them before being fraudulently dethroned. The only way to undo this evil cabal of high-powered liberal predators was with the support of Q's loyalists, known as Q Patriots, or Bakers, who'd hunt for meaning in their anonymous leader's secret clues, Q drops, or crumbs, which were sprinkled throughout the web. To trust in Q meant to reject mainstream government, vehemently scorn the press, and contest doubters at every turn. It's all a necessary part of the ongoing paradigm shift. QAnon developed rallying cries including, "You are the news now," and "Enjoy the show," referencing the impending awakening or apocalypse. In September 2020, a Daily Kos Civics poll reported that over half of the Republicans surveyed believed either partially or mostly in QAnon's theories, at least the theories they were aware of, because tumble further down the QAnon rabbit hole and you'll find satanic panic-esque, flagrantly fascist beliefs that not every subscriber even knows about, at least not at first. Theories about Jeffrey Epstein co-conspiring with Tom Hanks to molest hordes of minors, Hillary Clinton drinking the blood of children in order to prolong her life, the Rothschilds running a centuries-old ring of Satan worshippers, and beyond. But QAnon quickly grew to encapsulate much more than stereotypical far-right extremists. Take a soft turn to the left, and you'll find a more outwardly palatable denomination of conspiritualists whose paranoias might be slightly less focused on Hillary Clinton worshiping Satan and more on Big Pharma forcing evil Western medicine on them and their kids. These believers wield a slightly different glossary of loaded terms, some co-opted from feminist politics, like forced penetration, which conflates vaccination with sexual assault, and my body, my choice, an anti-vax, anti-mask slogan purloined from the pro-choice movement. Because social media algorithms track people's keywords in order to feed them only what they're already interested in, a sprawling spiderweb of customized QAnon offshoots was able to form. In this manner, with language as its matter and energy, QAnon became like a black hole sucking in every breed of cultish 21st century believer that crossed it. That's part of why its central buzzwords, like the deep state, mainstream media, and paradigm shift, are so lofty and vague. They work to reel in and bond recruits without revealing too much. It's not unlike how Scientology conceals the language of their bizarre upper levels so as not to lose new followers. Akin to a horoscope, the generic posts allow participants to convince themselves that they're being spoken to uniquely, like this community singularly holds the answers to the world's suffering, all the while camouflaging the fact that a unified belief system doesn't actually exist. Like most manipulative cults, QAnon's magnetism is largely the promise of special foreknowledge, which is available only to members of its enlightened underground collective. This allure is constructed with, and this will sound quite familiar now, an exhaustive social act of insidery acronyms and keyboard symbols, us, them labels, and loaded language. In QAnon speak, CBTS stands for calm before the storm. Truth seekers are followers, and ignorant outsiders are sheeple, or agents of the elite. Hashtag Save the Children is an innocent-sounding QAnon shibboleth stolen from real child trafficking activists, used to hide in plain sight and attract newcomers. 5D consciousness is a level of enlightenment that becomes available to insiders during turbulent times. Ascension is a loaded buzzword used to explain away symptoms of anxiety or cognitive dissonance, and looking at all viewpoints is one of many euphemisms equating evidence and fantasy. The glossary goes on, and it's always changing, branching off into different dialects of QAnonese in order to accommodate new additions to the belief system. and so that social media algorithms don't catch up, flag the language, and block or shadow ban the accounts using it. New code words, hashtags, and rules for how to use them are introduced all the time. QAnon followers, some of whom are influencers with acolytes of their own, stand by for updates, often choosing to post only in their ephemeral Instagram stories, the social media equivalent of "this message will self-destruct in 24 hours." This creates an even deeper level of exclusivity for the followers following them. To put it crudely, with QAnon, there are cults, inside cults, inside cults, inside cults. It's the ultimate cultception, and social media made it possible. Depending on their subsect of beliefs, QAnon participants feel free to define the broad talk of sheeple and 5D in whatever way resonates. After all, for them, truth is subjective. It doesn't matter to them that some interpretations of this language have led to enough real-world violence that QAnon has become one of the most threatening domestic terror groups of our time. Since 2018, QAnon supporters have committed murders, made bombs, destroyed churches, derailed freight trains, live-streamed themselves monologuing about Q while engaged in a high-speed police car chase, and organized deadly pro-Trump mobs, among other nightmarish crimes. It also doesn't matter that at its core, QAnon is just another madcap, apocalyptic cult in a line of them that goes back centuries. The updated cast of characters is new, and so is the medium of social media, but baseless doomsday predictions and ideas of dark forces secretly controlling everything are practically trite. All this, and still, those wrapped up in the QAnon to conspirituality culture of shared understanding will find a way to keep rolling with it no matter what. Any question or wrinkle can be conveniently dismissed with one of their go-to thought-terminating cliches, like, trust the plan. The awakening is bigger than all of this. The media is propaganda. And do your research, which refers to a process of falling down an obsessed, confirmation-biased rabbit hole online, revealing a fantasy world of explanations for things that feel inexplicable. If this all sounds like a dystopian video game, that's part of the fun. There's a reason Q's original timbre was so conspiratorial it sounded like a made-for-TV movie. Follow the money. I've said too much. Some things must remain classified to the very end. QAnon has been described as an unusually absorbing alternate reality game, where online users play their imaginary roles as bakers, hungrily anticipating the puzzle of each new crumb. According to UCLA psychiatrist Dr. Joseph M. Pierre, this sort of virtual treasure hunt creates a form of conditioning called a variable ratio schedule, where rewards are dispensed at unpredictable intervals. Like online gaming or gambling, or even the erratic intoxication of when you'll get your next social media like, that feeling that keeps you refreshing your feed, QAnon's immersive experience generates a kind of compulsive behavior similar to addiction. In a cognitive analysis of QAnon for Psychology Today, Pierre noted that with QAnon, the conflation of fantasy and reality isn't so much a risk as a built-in feature. Some of the psychological quirks thought to drive conspiracy theory belief in general, Pierre writes, include a craving for uniqueness, plus the needs for certainty, control, and closure that feel especially urgent during crisis-ridden times. With all their plot twists and good-evil binaries, conspiracy theories seize our attention, while supplying simple answers to unresolved questions. Conspiracy theories offer a kind of reassurance that things happen for a reason, and can make believers feel special that they're privy to secrets to which the rest of us, sheeple, are blind, Pierre explains. After platforms like Twitter and Instagram started catching on to the dangers of QAnon and cracking down, supporters had to get more creative with their language in order to communicate without getting deleted. This is part of why QAnon messages began appearing in the form of aesthetic quotegrams, graphically designed maxims that blend in with the keep calm and manifest type self-care memes innocently populating most users' Instagram feeds. This development soon became known as pastel QAnon. Quotegrams, with their comely fonts and generic syntax, serve as a form of loaded language themselves, designed to yank on users' heartstrings to get them to like and repost without much thought. It's what allowed one clever troll in 2013 to get away with photoshopping Hitler quotes over images of Taylor Swift, obscure ones pulled from Mein Kampf. The only preventable measure one can take is to live irregularly. Do not compare yourself to others. If you do so, you are insulting yourself. The memer uploaded his creations to Pinterest and watched smugly as fans reposted them all over the web. The point was to prove the extreme devotion of impressionable young Swifties and their eagerness to instantly and unquestioningly share all things Tay. There's a religious power in quotegrams that far predates social media. Our love of a pithy adage in square form is connected to the needle-pointed psalms on display in religious ants' powder rooms. But it even goes back further than that to, can you guess the era? The Protestant Reformation, when there was a big shift in focus away from religious imagery, stained glass, Last Supper frescoes, and onto text. There was an increasing discomfort with the ambiguity you get from images, commented Dr. Marika Rose, a Durham University research fellow in digital theology, in Grazia magazine. So a Protestant valuing of the Bible made it a much more text-based religion. Ever since, our culture has looked to snack-sized proverbs for guidance and gospel, convinced that when it comes to written quotes, what you read is what you get. On the internet, however, a mysterious epigram with no clear source can serve as an on-ramp leading seekers to something much more sinister. With no tangible organizational structure, no single leader, no cohesive doctrine, and no concrete exit costs, QAnon is not exactly in the same cultish category as, say, Heaven's Gate or Jonestown. But a fully immersed QAnon follower couldn't just go cold turkey. For those fully submerged in the world of the awakening and the research, climbing out of the rabbit hole could mean a profound psychological loss, a loss of something to occupy one's time, of feeling connected to something important, of finally feeling a sense of self-worth and control during uncertain times, elucidates Pierre. Even if former believers come out to denounce QAnon, the existential consequences are enough to keep true diehards under. Not everyone finds their way into a QAnon-level internet cult, but platforms from Facebook to Tumblr are what help life feel important and connected for so many of us. The way I see it, while celebrities and conspiritualists create their own cult followings online, the ultimate church to which billions of us belong, even, and especially, figures like Dr. Joe Dispenza and Donald Trump, is social media itself. In a sense, we can't even claim to be growing less religious when social media's job is explicitly to generate ideological sex, to pack people's feeds with suggested content that only exaggerates what they already believe. As each of us posts, curating our individual online identities, the apps capture those personas via metadata and reinforce them through irresistible targeted ads and custom feeds. No cult leader takes advantage of our psychological drives quite like the algorithm, which thrives on sending us down rabbit holes so we never even come across rhetoric we don't agree with unless we actively search for it. The way we make choices, from our clothes all the way to our spiritual and political beliefs, is a direct consequence of these uncanny digital versions of ourselves. In her book, Strange Rights, Tara Isabella Burton wrote, "America is not secular, but simply spiritually self-focused. In a social media-centered society, we've all been rendered at once cult leader and follower." 3. It would be easy enough for me to write off all these groups, from SoulCycle to Instagram, as cultish and thus evil. But in the end, I don't think the world would benefit from us all refusing to believe or participate in things. Too much wariness spoils the most enchanting parts of being human. I don't want to live in a world where we can't let our guards down for a few moments to engage in a group chant or mantra. If everyone feared the alternative to the point that they never took even small leaps of faith for the sake of connection and meaning, how lonely would that be? Studies of famous scientists' personalities and their receptivity to offbeat beliefs show that excessive cynicism actually stymies discovery. Science writer Michael Shermer found that iconic brains like paleontologist Stephen Jay Gould and astronomer Carl Sagan scored off the charts in both conscientiousness and openness to experience, indicating an ideal balance between being pliant enough to accept the occasional kooky claim that turned out to be correct, but not so credulous that they fell for every outlandish theory they stumbled across. Sagan, for example, was open to the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, which at the time was considered a moderately heretical idea, said Shermer. But he was too conscientious to accept the even more controversial claim that UFOs and aliens have actually landed on Earth. Long story short, sometimes when something sounds too wacky to be true, it really is that delightfully, truthfully wacky. Some say people who join cults are lost, but all human beings are lost to some degree. Life is disorderly and confusing for absolutely everyone. A more thoughtful way to think about how people find themselves in precariously cultish scenarios is that these folks are actively searching to be found, and, because of variations in genes and life experiences and all the complicated factors that make up human personalities, they're more open than the average person to finding themselves in unusual places. To stay safe requires just the right combination of fact-checking, cross-checking, and amenability to the idea that spiritual fulfillment may very well come from unexpected sources. I also don't think it's helpful to decide there's something naturally, defenselessly malevolent about the everyday cults to which most humans belong. SoulCycle is not Scientology. Instagram influencers are not Jim Jones. And as we've learned, invoking sensationalized cult leader comparisons to denounce any group that rubs us the wrong way can create confusion surrounding what the hazards being critiqued even are. It can create active harm. We know this from the siege of the Branch Davidian compound when the FBI was so scandalized into believing Waco was bound to become another Jonestown that they themselves wound up causing an avoidable calamity. Now, Waco acts as perverse inspiration for some of those anarchical right-wing internet groups who view dying in an FBI standoff as the ultimate martyrdom. Events like this serve as proof that overlooking the nuances of cultish communities only perpetuates a culture of hyperbole and chaos. The fact is that most modern-day movements leave enough space for us to decide what to believe, what to engage with, and what language to use to express ourselves. Tuning in to the rhetoric these communities use and how its influence works for both good and not so good can help us participate, however we choose, with clearer eyes. Growing up on my dad's Synanon stories, his daily escapes to the forbidden high school in San Francisco, his experiments in the microbiology lab, taught me that as much as good moods and optimism can make a person more susceptible to suspicious influence, they can also lift someone out of a truly dark situation. With the right amount of judicious questioning, taking care never to abandon your logical thoughts or emotional instincts, which are there for a reason, one can ensure they stay connected to themselves through anything from an isolated commune to an oppressive startup job to a scammy Instagram guru. Above all else, it's important to maintain a vigilant twinkle in your eye, that tingle in your brain that tells you there's some degree of metaphor and make-believe here, and that your identity comes not from one Swami or single-minded ideology, but from the vast amalgam of influences, experiences, and language that make up who you are. As long as you hang on to that, I think it's possible to engage with certain cultish groups, knowing that at the end of the day, when you come home or close the app, strip off the group's linguistic uniform, and start speaking like yourself again, you're not all in. When I began writing this book, I was a touch concerned that by the end, all this cult research would just turn me into an antisocial, misanthropic version of myself. And even though I do feel more hyper-aware than ever of the varying dialects of cultish that imbue our daily lives, I've also gained a stronger sense of compassion. While I'm hardly likelier to move to a Shambhala-esque co-op or put my loyalty into some Instagram conspiritualist myself, I have acquired a newfound ability to suspend harsh judgment of those who might. This comes from knowing that one's out-of-the-box beliefs, experiences, and allegiances are less a mark of individual foolishness and more a reflection of the fact that human beings are, to their advantage and their detriment, physiologically built to be more mystical and communal than I knew. It's in our DNA to want to believe in something, to feel something alongside other people seeking the same. I'm confident there's a healthy way to do that. Part of me thinks it's actually by becoming a part of several cults at once, like our Jonestown survivor Laura Johnston Cole exchanging her one commune lifestyle for involvement in a medley of separate groups. That way, we're free to chant, to hashtag, to talk of manifesting and blessings, to use glossolalia even, to speak some form of cultish, all the while staying tethered to reality. So let's try again. Come along. Join me. Life is much too peculiar to go at it all alone. This is Anne-Marie Gideon. We hope you have enjoyed this unabridged production of Cultish, The Language of Fanaticism by Amanda Montell, presented by Harper Wave and Harper Audio. This program was produced by B Audio Limited. Executive producer Jennifer Lopes. Text copyright 2021 by Amanda Montell. Production copyright 2021 by HarperCollins Publishers. All rights reserved. Thank you for listening.